So how many of you have done research about blockchain before? Cool, awesome, pretty much everyone. So how many of you have done research about Elastos before? Wow, so it looks like everybody's from our community. Thank you so much for coming. So Ron flew all the way from China yesterday, and actually all our speakers, which are the founders of our dApps, also flew all the way from the East Coast, from China, from different places. So let's just give a warm welcome to our founder, Ron Chen. He will explain about Elastos first, and then we'll introduce our dApps as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you for everyone for coming. And it's amazing to do a presentation, a very classical theater here. Before I formally start talking about what we're doing, actually I'll share a little bit of my experiences. The whole thing actually started from 18 years ago when I was at Microsoft designing something called .NET. So I give a little bit of history about why we started that project, right? The name of it is called .NET, meaning it's not, has network in mind. Actually, in 1992, Sun Macro designed, the author of Java programming language, came up with the slogan called the network is the computer. Because at that time, people didn't really pay that much attention to it. But 1992 was the year actually Mosaic was first came to this world. And of course, later on, Netscape was grown out of Mosaic in 1995. It went public and the stock went up to the roof, right? And that said, actually by 1998, Microsoft started to design something called, to think of it as a network, as a computer, and built the .NET framework. Unfortunately, the project, in a way, to a lot of people, hello? Yeah, it was a failure. But then it's been 20 years. There's some background here. March of this year, Microsoft announced that they were disbanding the Windows team. I don't know how much have you heard the news. Microsoft has no Windows team no more. Have you heard? No? Okay, then here's something really deserves some mentioning because of, it's on the news, right? Not only, I thought it's only Chinese media didn't pay attention. Unfortunately, the American media didn't do a good job either because Microsoft doesn't have a Windows team anymore, okay? It's gone. Then people should ask why, okay? Because for such a big corporation, getting rid of its Windows team is no small take, right? And whether you like Microsoft or not, doesn't really matter, but then it deserves some research. That said, actually there was a company called Xerox. Once upon a time was very, very popular and powerful. And Xerox in the 1980s, when I first came to this country in 1994, January of 94, actually, Xerox was so popular, right? Xerox invented three things, Windows and Ethernet, and then the object-oriented programming. Basically, Xerox had designed a mouse and designed the Windows interface for the Windows, and also invented the so-called Ethernet, right? The network we're using today, and also the object-oriented programming at that time called Smalltalk 80. And three things was very, very popular, but then the company went pretty much down under. And people overlooked the facts that the same thing could happen to Microsoft, even though the stock is doing okay. But then when they had money to do research, I know a lot of people call them evil, but they did indeed something at least meaningful to me, right? I'm a true believer of the .NET vision, even though the technical route it took, I didn't really agree. So that's why I left Microsoft year 2000. And then I'll start talking about Elastos. The name of Elastos, I came up with the name in 2002, 2 years after I launched this project. At first it was started by something called, some nickname in Chinese, but then I came up with the name Elastos in 2002 on a flight from China back to Seattle. Then I can explain why, what's the meaning behind it, right? By Elastos, of course, first it means something called elastic compute. And elastic compute was really the term used by Amazon in 2006. That was, what it says is you can create virtual machines in the cloud, right? What's the cloud? It actually was a server farm. Like, say, a cloud center has about 10,000 hardware PCs. Then on top of this 10,000 hardware PCs, you could literally launch 100,000 virtual machines on demand, or kill some of them also on demand, right? It's elastic, depends on how many people log in, and you launch more virtual machines and destroy them according to the demand, right? So it's called elastic because it's a creation or deletion on demand. But now, when we talk about it today, we're talking about, because it's a virtual machine, right? And now given the PCs or the smartphones, comparing 2006, where like literally 12 years later, right? Our phones can run multiple virtual machines now, PCs as well, right? So could we do virtual machines spreading out the web from the phone back to the cloud? We don't really limit the virtual machines only running in the cloud, right? Could be on a smart router, could be on your phone, so could have a ubiquitous deployment of virtual machines. That's the first meaning of Elastos. So we built virtual machines across the board. And that's why we start to build something I named it called Smart Web. Smart Web meaning the web that runs apps, right? Because like a smartphone is a phone that runs apps. So that's why I named it Smart Web. Secondly, when we talk about Elastos, if you spell it carefully, there's a pun, E-last-OS, right? Actually, the reason why I named it that way, I mean, it's a coincidence, but then even back 20 years back, dated back to the Microsoft years, we pretty much had the hunch it'll be the last. Okay, 20 years back, literally. Because when we design an operating system for the network, we cannot, absolutely not. You cannot have versioning. Let's say, because if you have one machine at that time was a Windows 2000 in alpha beta stage. If you have a Windows 2000, you have device drivers, okay? And you put in a printer, you put in a projector, then at that time, remember the back days, 1995, 1998, and year 2000, they require you to update your drivers. And if you upgrade your operating system, the operating system will ask you to update the device drivers as well. But if you're talking about a network OS, you cannot dictate the versioning of websites. You cannot dictate the versioning of, say, the projectors of this room, right? Let's say I came up with an older machine or newer machine. Can I ask the driver of a projector to upgrade or downgrade on demand? I couldn't. So then that's where you have to research on, can we do an operating system without drivers, without dictating the versions of drivers, right? In a way, what we're saying is, can you design a system without drivers at all? And the basic idea is that actually, when we were in school back in the 70s, late 70s, at that time, the terminals were called dummy terminals. Have you heard about the term dummy terminals? Anyone? Or no? We're too young. Because then I'll just basically giving you what was going on at that time. In the 70s, the CPUs are so expensive, right? We can only afford to build one. And then the displays, if you see the 007 James Bond movies, right? They have those teletypes. You know, this, what was the intelligence office giving orders, and then you see the little typewriter, right? It's electric typewriters that typing up those secret messages. And at that point, it's really by something called a serial line and parallel line, literally by copper wires, by the power voltage, high and low, representing 0 and 1s, and by the combination of the wires, then having the relay to suck the mechanical arm and then giving you typing A, typing B. So at that time, all peripherals were dummy, meaning without CPUs. And without CPU, then somehow the translation between a message into the mechanical actions actually are done by a piece of software has to be on the motherboard because of the typewriter was dummy. And also, when you have a display, right, like black and white or amber at that point, and it doesn't really have a CPU built in. It's pretty much like those vacuum tubed TV, right? And so they are called dummy terminals and dummy peripherals. Then there's only one place we put drivers. That was the motherboard. So that's why drivers were built into the operating system. I know people should know about Linux, right? And Linux, actually, the predecessor of Linux is called Unix. And Unix research started in either 1969 or 1970. Actually, the internet was also started around that time. They're about a year apart. One of them is 1969, the other one is 1970. So what we're saying is, today's technology is just as backward as the 70s, and it haven't changed, okay? So the operating system research, really what we're using today, even though a lot of people are saying Linux is so advanced, so powerful, actually, they're just as powerful as 40 years ago. It's the same thing, which haven't done any drastic changes since then. And by 1998, when we designed .NET, we think we could fix it. So by something called software as a service. So meaning all peripherals are smart with a CPU, and we can treat them as services. Services meaning they can be replaced. They can be, let's say, if what's a service, right? Service is something as long as you can replace them with a different one. Say I can use this printer or I can use a different printer. You put in with the standards. You hook up the serial line and to a consumer, they look the same, right? So comparing to you have a generic battery with you have a brand name battery. As long as the battery is swappable, we call them a battery as a service. So that's basically the definition of software as a service, meaning the software module could be replaceable. That was the idea. But what's going on here is so long as they're replaceable, right? We don't really care about whether the battery is which version or what year it's produced. So that's why following the concept, and we had a hunch we could design an operating system without versions. Okay, now we're fast forward to March of this year, right? The reason why Microsoft doesn't have a Windows team no more is because if you read the news more carefully, they divide the team into two halves. One is they push the kernel, everything into devices, And so when we buy a phone, when we buy a machine, a computer, when we buy a projector, it has a built-in kernel, built-in BIOS, and then everything else, right? It's on-demand loading the virtual machines on demand. So the virtual machines belong to the cloud, and the kernel built into the device. So that's why there's no more Windows, which means no more buying a computer and installing operating systems, right? So you buy a phone, whether it's Android or iOS, you don't really install OS anymore, correct? So on a PC, you're not going to install Windows anymore, right? So that's why they don't have a Windows team. That's the reason why it's related to Elastos, as I mentioned. First of all, it's a virtual machine spread across the board. And secondly, the devices, they don't have versioning, so they can build into the BIOS, the firmware. That's basically the conclusion. We don't have to go into technical details. Then we fast forward to giving the presentation, what we're doing today, right? And we are building something called smart web. Smart web meaning the internet. And internet, when people talk about the last internet was something called information internet, which meaning information at your fingertips. You can click a URL, you get some web pages, or you can share data through your social network. Say on Facebook or on WeChat, you can send video, you can send pictures between peers. And internet of information, everything actually you shared is data. But then now people talk about information of value, right? Because if you did something, research on blockchain, people could finally sharing like Bitcoins peer-to-peer without an intermediary, and people claiming that's sharing value peer-to-peer, right? That said, if you think a step further, especially when we are in Hollywood, and when we share anything larger than a number, anything like a movie, a book, a game, of course, it's a blob of code, right? It's a bunch of files together. And that's more than a number. When we share two numbers together, and actually, if I send you a number, a Bitcoin, actually there's a code which interprets what that one means. There's a blockchain called Bitcoin blockchain, right? That code is running on 10,000 nodes owned by no organizations, no governments, and no individuals. It's a consortium or owned by a community. And then we share a value, one from me to Faye, but then the number is interpreted by that community who runs the decentralized ledger. So then when I send you one, meaning we also, not only I send you one, we also have a common shared code, not owned by government, not owned by individuals, right? So keep that in mind. But when I share a movie between one party to another, who's owning the code, interpreting the movie? If I send you like a H.264, H.265 movie, if I send you the movie peer-to-peer, can I do that with the existing internet? Of course I could. When I send the movie from one party to another, first thing happens is fairly often, right? And people do the first direct piracy. Direct piracy meaning if you send me your movie, I could freely make a duplicate and send it to someone else. And if you want to sell me the movie, if you want to sell me that copy, you sell me once, then I make a duplicate, I sell it, I give it to someone else, right? Without abiding by your rules that you told me, oh, I sell you for your eyes only, you cannot resell it. I say, okay, fine. You sell it to me, but I kind of ignore it, then I piracy it. It's a first degree, right? First piracy. And then the second piracy, indirect piracy, would be, okay, since I don't trust you, I cannot give you the movie, then who should I give? I give to the channel. I give to the media player, right? And who is claiming then, let's say, I don't want to name names, but then say a website. And you give your content to that website, hoping to monetize the movie you made. And then, of course, the website will sign a contract saying every time the movie being played, I give the author a cut, correct? But there's an indirect piracy, meaning fairly often the website may not telling the truth. It's played by a consumer like a million times. Then the website could say, okay, it's being played only 10,000 times, right? Because they didn't give me the cut, then it's a pure profit for the website, correct? It happens, right? I've heard the news like a movie showing in theaters and people have an argument going on to court. In fact, how many audience watched? There's an argument between the author and the channel. So it's called second indirect piracy. So long as I don't own the code, then I don't really own the right. When we say we share value peer-to-peer, and especially in the blockchain ages, people are saying you own your own data, right? Well, I'm adding one more claim. If you don't own the code, you don't really own your own data, correct? Without owning your data, you don't have the right, you don't know how many times being played. So then the solution I'm proposing is that you send code peer-to-peer. You have the movie, you scramble it. Actually, it's not that hard for a computer science student. The project should be able to, it's not as hard as if someone graduated from college with a college degree, it should be able to do it, right? To give you a movie, scramble it into a game. It generates a game, which meaning I give it a movie, the tool will give me back a game. The game is so simple that it has only fast forward, fast backward, rewind, pause, play. Only that limited functionalities. And then giving that game, I share peer-to-peer to someone else. And then the guy who received the movie, received the game, plays it. And if it play once or play a million times, I got a message back, right? Every time plays the movie, it send me a message saying it played once, played twice, played 3 times. And so long as it's a game, it can send me a message back home. But then the problem is, given the operating system from the 70s, one thing we noticed that is there are lots of viruses. We all learned our lessons. If you send executables through email, which is achievable 40 years back, right? You can send email, send exe, executable file through email. And we all know, people warn us, don't click on it. If you click on it, very likely your machine will be infected with virus. So that's the first challenge. How do we send code peer-to-peer without spreading viruses? That's the challenge number one. The second one is, because of its code, we have to load it. You load the code, giving operating system a chance. When we load you, we go check the blockchain, whether you still own it. If you own it, we'll play it. If you don't own it, I mean, if you sell the movie to me, you don't own it anymore, even though you have all the bits on your hard drive. But then it needs to be executed, right? Only one virtual machine plays it. And the virtual machine, when it plays it, it'll check against the blockchain. Okay, you don't have the right. You don't play it anymore. So which meaning the operating system is different from 20 years back, right? Because at that time, If you purchase an office, you can play it 1,000,000 times if you wish. But with the blockchain, we can limit the number of times you play the content, which really, then later on I'll mention about the blockchain, right? We can create something called a scarcity. So we create limitations on the times the movie could be played, which is really the key to create a private asset. If I own the movie, I own the right, I own a piece of asset, as if I own a hard copy book. If I purchase a book from Amazon, and I can resell it because I own that piece of property. I can dispose it any way I like. So I own it, ownership of private asset that I own. But then today, if you buy an ebook from Amazon, you don't really have the right to resell your ebook, not as you resell your hard copy paperback books, right? So that means if you buy a paperback book, you own it. If you buy an ebook, you don't really own it. You lease it for your lifetime, which has a different meaning to it, right? You don't really, currently on the internet, nobody owns anything except the big corporations. But paperback books, we literally own it, right? That's a capitalism, right? Your ownership of something really doesn't exist on the internet. That's how big the problem is. Can we solve the problem, right, given the blockchain technology? So then, after that, I will mention, this is the first point I'm trying to pass through. Second point is that when we talk about internet of value, we're emphasizing on the word internet. Internet meaning it's a multiple nodes. A network meaning you have multiple nodes, multiple parties connected to one another, all right? So that's a network, meaning on this internet, right, you have Google, you have Apple, you have Yahoo, you have Microsoft, right? They have different companies and individuals. We are all interconnected. Each of those big companies I mentioned, they have millions of computers inside them, logically, right? So we have two aspects, two points looking at exactly the same thing. Let's say if I look at this phone, we all know there's a quad-core, octa-core built into the machine. So for a chief engineer point of view of this machine, it has a quad-core, right? There are messages between the core A and core B, core 1 and core 2, correct? So inside the machine, it's decentralized, it's distributed, but yet to a consumer, this is one machine, right? So regardless of how many machines Google has, we treat them as one entity. So we're talking about multi-parties of internet. We're not really talking about Google has 1 million of computers. Google is just one node called google.com. As if, let's say google.com has a search bar. We say, okay, let's search what is Elastos. Literally, that search is done by millions of computers in parallel, which we don't really care as a consumer. The reason why I'm emphasizing this point is to a lot of people doing background research on blockchain, I know especially people here may not be as technical as like Vitalik or BM, right? Bitmaster. To them, even lately, Vitalik wrote an article saying, physically, Ethereum is decentralized and distributed because it has 6,000 to 1,000 to 10,000 nodes distributed all across the world. But logically, Ethereum is a centralized ledger. I emphasize, that's Vitalik's word. It's a centralized, logically, a centralized ledger. Because a lot of people saying Ethereum or blockchain, they're decentralized, which is actually not true. Because one ledger, it's just one ledger we can have more trust into. Logically, that ledger is not much different from a ledger of Bank of America. It's just we have less trust into the ledger of Bank of America, okay? So when we write a transaction, I send you a Ethereum or send you a Bitcoin from one another. That's just a very simple transaction. From point A to point B on a certain date with both parties' signatures and with a remark field, right? On an average of about 250 bytes. So that's one transaction. And every 10 minutes, we build a block for Bitcoin. So that's about 4,000 transactions. Just as simple as that, okay? Remember that. Bitcoin is not that difficult. It's just very simple to understand. Then every 10 minutes you have page, every 10 minutes you have page, then you build up a ledger. That ledger is stored on 10,000 nodes. We can trust more because no one can turn it off, no one can manipulate. Comparing to Bank of America, we deposit a check, point A to point B, with both signatures on a date and with a remark. And so actually the Bank of America, when they deposit a check, the meaning of it, really the two are equivalent. It's just one which could be manipulated, right? Could be ordered by the Bank of America. The check could be lost. So that what I'm saying is the blockchain, we have more trust than the Bank of America, but both of them are centralized. Both of them are one ledger, okay? We have to emphasize that. Because one blockchain could never build a distributed system because it's a one ledger. To build a distributed system, we really have to talk about multiple parties. Then we talk about decentralized. Who's the big boss? Who is the big brother? Google, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, right? Who is the bigger brother? Somehow between them, they have to build a trust. In China, they have to be like Tencent, Alibaba, Baidu, and right? So among themselves, who do you trust more? Or when we talk about Internet of the world, we're adding up those big corporations. Who is the bigger one? Only the multiple parties has an issue of decentralized, which meaning the network, the internet, has a problem with the decentralization, right? With a centralization or big brotherhood. So then, let's say we have only 5 big brothers, 5 big players of the internet. No one trusts the other. How are you going to establish trust between them? Then this one, I don't trust that one. So, but then we have to trust this blockchain. We know, let's say Bitcoin, no one's controlling it. We can all create a wallet. And no one has the right, 5 big players, right? No one has the right to revoke the wallet someone created. No one has the right, to manipulate the data. The Bitcoin, how much coins do you have in your Bitcoin, right? So the 5 big players of the internet saying, then can we say, you don't trust me? Then can we establish a protocol saying we all trust the wallets created on Bitcoin, correct? That's a fair way to put it. Let's say if the 5 of them agreed, then saying, okay, if Microsoft issuing ID, Google didn't like it. If Google issuing ID is Apple doesn't like it, right? Then can we use the wallet being our common IDs? Is that fair? Correct? That's why we need to build a smart web. We build an internet, given the blockchain to issue IDs, which is not manipulated by any of the players. And the problem with internet today is that internet, as I mentioned, internet was designed either 1969 or 1970, right? At that time, at least the founding fathers of internet made a very wise decision to make the internet decentralized. No one's controlling the internet. Anybody with a server, you know someone on the internet, you connect to it, you're adding one more node to the internet. So which make the internet spread across the world, convincingly saying no one is controlling it. But the problem with the internet is also decentralized, because everyone can have a server connect to the internet, and then, let's say in the 70s, because all the nodes are controlled by research institutions, universities, and big corporations. But now, internet is spreading across all countries and all individuals. Of course, we know there are criminals, there are sharks, robbery, and fake items, fake everything, right? So then that's why you see viruses spreading the internet and the fake identities, and no one can trust one another. That's the problem is growing, especially in the Internet of Things, IoT era. We have millions of surveillance cameras, sensors all across the world. Let's say, how many of you know a smart light bulb, right? Like a Philip, those light bulbs sold in Apple stores, right? And people can make those light bulbs in China, right? So-called the circuitry, the motherboard for a light bulb. It's about $1, $2 each, built into the light bulbs, right? And if you screw those light bulbs, millions of them, into homes, because we all know there's a router, the router firewall is one-sided. It's like a one-side mirror. From outside the internet, you cannot see the devices inside your home. But on the other hand, all devices from your home can have free access into the internet. So if I screw those fake light bulbs, millions of them, into any country, right? The light bulbs at certain time, say, launch a DDoS attack, send network packets to any given website IP address in a loop. Basically, if you deploy 1 million light bulbs, you can attack any country, any website, just like that, right? The website's gone. Like what happened in 2015 December. If you do a little bit of research on 2015 December, the routers and surveillance cameras in the United States acting up and hit the dyn.com. And half of America, more than half of America is gone. Like Google, Facebook, Twitter, at that point, it's all shut off. Literally, okay? And which really literally meaning if you have that many light bulbs or surveillance cameras, any country is vulnerable to the attacks. So then, that's why actually 20 years back, we had this feeling we need a new operating system, right, to guarantee the security or safety of the internet. The solution, actually, that's the third problem or point I'm going to mention, is that we need a new operating system to share executables. Let's say Google has something called Instant App, and so basically we're sharing apps between one another, and also without fearing passing viruses, right? And also we have to guarantee the security or safety of the internet. The solution is actually very simple. We knew the solution 20 years back, is that no one is allowed to send any messages on the internet but the operating system. Operating system would be the sole mechanism or party which could send and receive messages. And we're making like Elastos open source under the scrutiny of everyone, but then pretty much like the blockchain, it's all open sourced, yet you cannot steal money from one wallet to another. And now we have the Elastos all open sourced and scrutinized by all developers of the world. Then no one actually can steal information from or the asset from like one hard drive to another, because the guarantee is by no one is allowed to send messages. Applications are not allowed to send network packets, right? It's very hard to grasp the concept to start with. And actually, it's not that sophisticated because in the past, in current operating systems, the applications, when the operating system is called device OS. Device OS meaning I can only take care of the device. I can take care of the phone, or I can take care of the PC, or I can take care of the router, right? Because like Android, iOS, and Windows, they can all take care of the hardware. But then for applications which want to go onto the internet, it's applications' responsibility to find the server they're looking for. Operating system doesn't care. If you want to go onto the internet, they only provide something called a socket, basically providing a entrance to the internet. But as if where you're going, operating system doesn't care. So you can send duplicate package to multiple destinations. Say, if I want a surveillance camera, should send the videos only to your phone, but the surveillance camera manufacturer took the liberty, make a copy to themselves, literally stealing your information. Currently, there's no one stop. No one stops the manufacturer from doing that, right? Say if the message could be only delivered by the operating system, then of course there's no backdoor to the manufacturer's website, correct? So that's how we feel it can, in a way, to a large extent, make it much harder to do piracy or to launch DDoS attacks. It's through something called metadata-driven remoting, called a reflection. The technology was very old, actually back into the Xerox years, 1980, by Smalltalk, they have this reflection, metadata-driven. It's there already. It's that old. It's not something new, okay? It's just people didn't, at that time, the hardware was not fast enough, the machine's not powerful enough, but currently all the capabilities are there. So we should be able to use something called a metadata-driven and taking over the network and having everything sent and received on something called a delegation. You delegate. You want something like let's say if I want to send a letter, I ask the mailman to do it, right? I don't literally go myself. So on a phone, virtual phone, right? Because if I want to make a call from one party to another, I dial a phone number. Then it's the AT&Ts and Verizons to do all the heavy lifting. It's called a carrier to send messages on your behalf. So that paradigm right now is applying to the internet. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but then what I'm saying is, given a phone number, we can find from one phone to another phone. If we talk fast enough, and we put one machine behind one phone, put another another computer behind another phone, actually we can do distributed computing without being able to hack the carrier. Correct? Anyway, that's the concept of it. So the technology, what I'm saying is, it's there. So I mentioned 3 points, right? And transferring value from one party to another, you cannot just transfer code. You have to transfer. You cannot just transfer data. You have to transfer code. So the value internet really is the internet of value is really internet of code, because there are only two things on your hard drive, data and code. The last internet is the internet of data. Now the forward-looking internet of value, actually is the internet of code. That's the point number one. Point number two, blockchain itself is centralized. The blockchain itself has nothing to do with decentralization or distribution. Decentralization and distribution, they are all about multiple parties. Only the internet has multiple parties, which needs to be decentralized, shouldn't be controlled by any big brothers. All right? So that's the point number two. Point number 3 is that we need a new operating system to take over the network traffics so then we can find off viruses and piracy. Okay? Do I have more time or? Yeah. So now the 4th point I'm going to mention is talk about a little bit about blockchain. So I see blockchain has 6 characteristics, 6 points that I want to mention. And decentralized apps. What is a decentralized app, right? Comparing to app. App meaning something we can consumer use. The software interact with consumers is called apps. The software which not interacting with consumers are called services. On Windows, it's called foreground windows and background services. On Linux, called foreground applications and background daemons. But they're really mentioning the same thing. So apps really has something to do with consumers. There are 4 kinds of dApps. dApps meaning the apps without intermediaries, getting rid of the intermediaries, decentralized dApps, decentralized apps, the apps that without intermediaries. There are only 4 kinds of dApps. Who is the most evil? It's the media player who's doing the indirect piracy. Then who is the media player? By and large, all software are intermediaries. Because if you write a doc, you need a Word to play it, right? If you write a PDF, you need Acrobat to play it. If you write a H.264 movie, you need a media player to play it. If you have MP3, you need a music player to play it. So the software, by and large, is the most evil intermediary. We need virtual machines to fend off the piracy, right? So that's the first intermediary. Second intermediary is the website, client-server website. The website, somebody is writing the blogs. Somebody is producing the short videos. Who is manipulating? We know Facebook is manipulating, right? We know a lot of those websites that are manipulating the big data. They don't tell us the truth. As if the movie played 1 million times or played 10,000 times. They may not telling the truth. So the second intermediary, which could be evil, is the website. So services. Who is the third? The third being the carrier. Because we have surveillance cameras installed at home. We have our phones. We want to watch the surveillance camera of our home. But someone took the liberty broadcasting home video through the internet. That's the carrier being evil, correct? How do we get rid of the carrier being the evil, right? That's the third kind of dApps. Can we make the carrier autonomous running? As if it's a Bitcoin, it's autonomous running by miners. Side effect of making it run. That's the third. The fourth one being the website is most of the website, all of the websites today are controlled by one organization or one individual. Can we have the website controlled by a consortium, by consensus? So a website is controlled by multiple parties built out of smart contracts. Among the 4 dApps, which one, as I mentioned, I ordered them. The client, the media player being the most, and the website being the second, could play harm to consumers. The third being the carrier. Only the fourth being consensus-based websites. What I'm saying is, today when we do research on blockchain, they are only talk about one kind of dApps. That's a smart contract. So to me, that's the least important of the 4 evils, okay? Because that's all the time I have. I can only tell you the conclusions. That's all my talk for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron, for sharing his over 30 years experience about the internet, about security, and about decentralization, and also about the problems in the internet we're using currently. So But actually, where Elastos is actually just trying to build a good infrastructure for the apps to build on. So that's why we're here to explore possibilities and opportunities in LA, in Hollywood, how we can provide a better environment for the artists to sell their art and to put their art on this platform. So that's why we invited our DApp Fresco, which is the first blockchain art platform. And we invited the founder of Fresco today, Roy Huang, who's from an art background family. So let's invite him to the stage and so he can share about what Elastos can provide for artists. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Faye. And thank you all for being here today. I know it's a Sunday afternoon, but there's no NBA Finals or NFL games. But thank you guys for being here. And may we change the slide to the second slide, please? Thank you. And also, just like I think Dr. Chen mentioned a very interesting point, the one I heard is that a lot of centralized platforms that are manipulating data. I mean, besides the whole Facebook thing, if you guys are familiar with the music streaming, especially younger guys, Jay-Z investing in a music streaming platform called Tidal. Tidal was it's a huge deal. Like last year, when they do the whole press release, they have Kanye, they have Beyonce, literally all the big shots are out to promote this new Spotify-like music service. But last month, one of the biggest scandals just came out, that Tidal, the inside employee revealed that Tidal manipulates the streaming data for Beyonce's Lemonade for more than 100 million clicks. So its data center literally plays your account, using your account to play Lemonade made by Beyonce for when you were at night. And this has been leaked. And it just shows you how the big companies are controlling people's data. So now jumping to Fresco. We call it a blockchain art asset network because the reason why that means we'll explain later. But you can already sense it's about data. It's about how can we turn artist data into the wealth that can be shared. But before I start, anybody here, everyone knows who Sean Combs, aka Diddy, is, right? Raise your hand if you know who Diddy is. Great, I love this crowd. So the Diddy, recently he just acquired a painting at Sotheby's, New York 2 weeks ago. And that painting was bought for $25 million. It's made by Kerry James Marshall, a very, very recently very hot African-American artist. But guess how much that painting was bought for? The $25 million painting back in '97. Well, let me tell you, if you can Google right now, search Diddy's new painting, how much it bought for. The piece got bought for $25,000 back in 1997. And that's in 20 years. Percent jump around, 40,000%. Well, if you think crypto is hot, if you think crypto is crazy, you don't know art yet. You don't know art investing yet. Just take a look at how art pieces today were being sold when it's first in a gallery. You see what's the real game about art investing and why more people should know about investing art. So here's a little rundown what we're gonna do. And so first, to begin with, it's about Fresco. We're the world's first blockchain art asset network. And through blockchain technology and Elastos platform, we were able to enable provenance, promotion, and liquidation of artwork at a global scale. Provenance, I will jump into later, each section we'll jump into later. We have two main components. First one is Fresh Trust, and second is Fresh Edition. Fresh Trust is the blockchain-based art value measurement system that help you measure the value of art without touching the market value. It might sound a little bit intricate, but later we'll explain more. And Fresh Edition is a digital asset offering system for which an owner of an artwork can issue limited copies of that artwork on blockchain and being sold across the whole platform. So a little bit rundown of the art market. As you can see, our market is probably the oldest market in the stream market we list out, but it has the smallest market cap. Right now, market cap probably around, with a new report that's released 2 weeks ago by TFOF, right now the market is probably at around 868 billion, but our market has been like this since the past 10 years. Even at 2007, the market's still only around 60 billion. Well, take a look at how crypto is going right now after 5 years. Right now, where are we at? We're at like around 450B. But yeah, it just shows you how big our market is. Yeah, it just shows you how big our market is. And, you know, yeah, the crypto is going down, but you never know because with more mainstream adoption. But just going over the reason why our market has been so like static. One of the main reasons is that if you go to any art fair, you go to Basel or you go to, you know, the Basel Miami where all the celebrities are there the first 2 days. That's called a VIP day. But when you're at a VIP day in Basel Miami or Basel Switzerland or even Basel Hong Kong, I guarantee you see the same crowd after the second time you go there. And it's always the same group of people that's buying art. Because there's only small number of people who knows art investing can bring that much. And only small number of people have access to art investing. Well, that's the reason why our market is not growing. And people has been desperately, even from the inside, wanting to grow it. That's why you go to Christie website right now, you can get a Picasso, original Picasso ceramics for around $1,000. No kidding, original Picasso. You can see for yourself. It just shows you, but they're marketing to the wrong people. You go to the auction house website, you need to have a bank statement worth certain money to open an account and then to buy $1,000 artwork. Well, people who go to those auction houses, they're not going for the pieces that's at a lower market, but a lot of us will. And that's just the game, the dilemma that's been facing the art industry. So the artwork problem number one is called the unclear provenance. Even provenance in the art world refers to the chronological documentation of who owns this painting before. For example, one just a little bit like mystery unmystified in the art, demystified in the art world is that when you buy an art, rule number one, you just don't buy from anyone you do not know. You buy from someone who's either established in the society or in the close art circle. And that's what provenance means. Any work you got from auction house, if it's good work, it shows you that at the beginning, it directly acquired from the artist, and then passed down to who, and then passed down to the next guy. And this provenance, sometimes you care about it more than the authenticity of a work, because it means the people before you already put that much into this object. And then when you hold on to the object, with the time passing by, the only thing it causes is going up, with a little bit of fluctuation. But yeah, always been this way. If you guys take a look at 2 weeks ago, the Rockefeller auction from the Christie's. Every single piece got sold. Even pieces, the cuff kink, the price estimate at $400, that goes up 10 times the price estimate, and then ended the hammer price at $4,000. Because people buy it because it's from Rockefeller. So when you sell that piece next time, you can say Rockefeller owned it before. That's why you buy art. You buy art because it's owned by someone before, and then you add your name to it. That's why you see people trying to build up their art collection. That's why you see in LA, we have some of the largest private museums. I won't name which one, but you know they open museum for that way because it's easier for them to collect art in the future. I'll just leave it there. So the problem today is that when you buy from gallery and auction houses, what the auction house gave you, if you buy a $3 million painting or $2,000 painting, is a paper slip in a really nice folder that's signed by the gallery owner saying, I certify this mister is the owner of this work. Well, you ought to see some gallery I know, they print out that paper only if you ask for them. And it's been happening in the art world for the past couple hundred years. You see, that documentation is very easily fabricated. Because our world, to be honest, is kind of with people from the inside, when I talk with them, they say it's a Jurassic Park. And it's not above, the exaggeration. Because a lot of people in the art world, they don't know technology beyond email. And to ask them to adopt something as new as blockchain, you truly have to go through a process that shows them what's the problem first. It's not about mentioning technology first. It's mentioning to them what's the problem and how can we better facilitate to solve the problem. And the problem number 2 is a centralized promotion, for which we touched on a little bit earlier. So going back to Carrie James Marshall, how the piece jumped from 1997's $25,000 to 2017, $25 million today. Well, to make, I would just say our artists today, with its academic value, are all, you have to be boosted by a group of art patron. That means if you support a student artist, fresh out of art school, how do you promote him? Well, you need a group of very connected art patrons who value the student work, who buy the student early at cheap. And this group of art patrons, using their leverage in the art world, try to get this artist into museum, into exhibition. Because, you know, it's all connection-based. I'm just saying very, very brutally real. It's same thing with the entertainment industry. It's same thing with the art industry. A lot of things boil it down, you know, and I know, all come down to connection. So if the artists have a support of a group of art patrons, and then through connection, they get into museum and the gallery for exhibition. Then with this gradual build-up of the art world presence, more art critics gonna come in and say, wow, who's this kid just got exhibited at a major museum? And then more art world presence coming in, which drive up the artist's price. And then the owner, the original art patron, the people who buy his work cheap, then you sell 1 or 2 of his work at beyond, you know, astronomical growth. And then you keep the rest, and then you store it. Sometimes you do not even store it at your home. You store it at storage. You wait for 10 years and then go to consign to auction house. Some people, I just tell you straight up, some people buy artwork without ever seeing it. I sometimes buy art, even I'm just, from a family collecting perspective, even a lot of our friends, or even people who's older than me, when they buy art, they just only look at the painting, see who's the artist, and who's the gallery behind it, and then buy art. We store in a factory in storage in New Jersey, never see it for 5 years, and then directly consign to auction house. This is how our game is played. So, and you can see, this is a piece from Christopher Wu, a very, very legendary American artist. And this is a piece called Apocalypse Now. This piece was initially purchased at New York's 303 Gallery in Soho for $7,500 at 1988. And in 2013, this can all be searched. 2013 is auctioned off by Christie's at $26 million. It just shows you how art investing it is, in the really rawest form. Most people, when you Google the art world, they don't tell you this. Even when you buy from galleries, they don't tell you this. But the problem right now facing the art world is that they need growth. And to incite that growth, more people need to know how art works. Most people don't know that how art investing works. So, and with only the auction house and galleries can only promote a certain number of artists per year, which this works before, back in Renaissance. Only the rich guys go to gallery. Like every rich guy buy art. But as you take a look at a global landscape with so many assets floating around, coming from Middle East, Africa, China, Southeast Asia, and even in the United States, the game is changing. A lot of people know how to buy, you know, like a $1,000 off-white sneaker, but they don't know they can buy a Virgil Abloh painting probably at only 10 times the price, and it's a unique work. While the sneaker you buy from Supreme or Off-White, they're unlimited edition. And they're being branding, selling as art. Think about the kind of environment they created for you. I mean, fashion brands are truly geniuses. They're genius because they use a leverage that most of us do not know art, while selling all of us that you can own a piece that's beyond its utility value. Think about it. That explains why people will go crazy for a $700 t-shirt that's made simply of cotton. It's the same essential marketing strategy used by art. And next slide. So about the lack of liquidation. So you're after buying a work from the primary market. Primary market means you buy from gallery. You buy that Christopher Wu from the 303 gallery. And the gallery does not sell you unless they can prove you're from the art circle. The gallery only sells to people who's in the art circle and knows who will protect the price by now selling the work, by keeping the work for 4 or 5 years. Because I think, just like crypto world, if everybody sells, market crashes. Same thing in the art world. So when you buy from the gallery, gallery counts on you a person's social status as credibility, so that you agree now selling this artist for 5 years or so. But the problem is that it's an arduous process to liquidate your artwork into cash, even today. So you consign to an auction house. Auction house takes a big chunk of a consignment fee. And sometimes the piece, just like this one, sometimes the piece does not get sold. Just simply in the market, there's not that much people going after Gerhard Richter right now. So the piece went unsold. It's a gorgeous piece, but it went unsold. It's just because it's not being sold at the right time. Sounds a lot familiar with how, VC world and finance world, even crypto world works, because it's essentially, when you boil it down to the bottom, it's all the same. It's how can you sell an asset? How can you package it, make it into an attractive thing, and sell to the next guy? Like, don't get this wrong. Like, I think this is the fundamentals of how to sell a product. And with the luxury fashion brands and art brands, as well as the VC guys, they master this craft to some certain extent, that they create a flora backed up by academic value that make you want to buy the whole thing. So how can we solve the problem of first, the centralized promotion, while creates anonymous yet transparent provenance and help liquidate art at a global scale, which in the process expand our population? Because when I see, a lot of people might think, if artwork's so secluded, like how the hell do you guys get in? Well, I say two things. First, in the art world, there's a food chain. If you're a collector, you're on the top of that food chain. You're the shark in the game. The galleries, auction houses, they all want to get you to buy the work. So me, from a collector family, I was able to leverage that. I scheduled a meeting with them, talking about, I want to buy work. And then I actually want to pitch them my idea in a way that's very smooth. I tell them about the problem they're facing and ask them to say whether they want to adopt, because this is the best way to ask for it. And secondly, like I said before, the art world is trying to open up. Before, 10 years ago, never imagined they want to sell a $1,000 Picasso. Or sometimes they're $500 Picasso because that's 2000 edition unsigned. Yes, sometimes the artist, Picasso has oil painting for 100 million. And some of Picasso's work are not made by Picasso himself, but rather Picasso's estate commissions a printing studio to print work on Picasso's behalf. And then if Picasso signed, those pieces are signed edition. If Picasso does not sign them, those are unsigned edition and get sold for cheaper. Whoops, I just tell you something in the art world that most people in the art world, they do not want to tell you this, but we feel very comfortable saying this because we're truly bringing some innovation that can help expand the art market while keeping everyone's interest protected. Because if more people think about it, if more people knows that you can get a piece of Picasso ceramics from, Christie's at $500, that's cheaper than sometimes when you buy what you call the decoration art from a street store or a branded store from IKEA. Well, you can say you own a Picasso. More people need to know about this. So that's why we have Fresh Trust. Fresh Trust reflects the total value trust allocated to an artwork by users on Fresco. And it's also the total value of fresh edition of this artwork. Fresh Trust is publicly visible and anonymous identity. So what Fresh Trust means, I'll go off the script. So any user, when the Fresco platform is live, you can upload the art you own to Fresco platform, which is essentially just like how you submit a piece to an auction house. You upload its photos as well as its description. And after you upload that art data is going to be directly linked to you. And if you're just a street guy who, on the street and you say you own a Picasso, no one's going to believe you because our Picasso original pieces in today's world are all verifiable. So we use a decentralized way for people to care about their own trust while maintaining the whole system's trust. So how can token be added to our artwork? Well, people can add tokens to the artwork, and this is an irrevocable process. To think better of this, I suggest you guys to learn about how, there are Western treasure binding for Bibles. If you go to some old museum, some Bible owned by the rich, the industrialist, they add diamonds, they add gemstone to a Bible. Why? Because they want to show affinity to an item, to an artwork, as well as show the process, show that they are the owner of the artwork. While we take that process to blockchain. for which you upload a piece. Right now it's a 0 fresco token, but you can choose to add token to that artwork to show your affinity, as well as all the other people in the system, our critic maybe, or our gallery owner who owns that piece, or your friend. As an artist, as you know, a lot of student artists, they pay 60K, 70K, go to art school. Their parents want to support the artist so bad, but the parents just do not know how. Where with this way, the parents can directly add token to the student's work. And this is an irrevocable process. When make it irrevocable, and because it's a way of locking the value inside the artwork, this value, and it does not correlate with market value, because the other bottom line truth about our world is that don't ask any galleries about the painting's price when you first go in, because prices are unnegotiable. You buy one Picasso, if you're a stranger, they charge you the full price. You buy two, and you say you're an established collector, well, we can talk about it, give you a 20% discount. You buy three, well, you're a whale, as you say the crypto world. You buy three and you say you're gonna keep in your museum. Well, we can talk about different price, sir. This is how it works. Well, with Fresh Trust, we provide an index. So next time you go to a museum, without knowing the market value of each piece from the museum or gallery, you can see a reference provided either by the museum organization itself or people online who love this work that much. Well, due to the various difficulty to directly measure the value of art, as well as the price opacity and over-concentrated pricing power of the top-level players, for which we already explained, the art market tends to intimidate new investors and collectors, creating a social barrier to entry. That's why every time you go to art fair, even though they're like all piles of gold mine, you buy from gallery, you know you hold on to 5 years later, it'll go up. But a lot of new players are so shy to get in. Because when you as a stranger go to an art fair, you truly do not know how to talk with anybody. You cannot go there just ask how much I want to buy that one. No, you need a smooth way of talking about it. You first go there and say, off the script totally. You first go there and say, wow, this is a gorgeous piece. Who's the artist behind it? Can you tell me about his story? Is it exhibited at major museums and major galleries? Oh, it's represented by you gallery. Oh, that sounds good. I want to make a significant contribution to this artist. Can we talk more? And then you start a conversation. You see, it's a way of how you talk. It's almost the same way as if you're in the PE world. I come from a finance background. If you're in the PE world, when you do leveraging, it's the same thing. You try to buy a company share, you do not just go in and ask how much it's worth. You have to start a conversation. You have to smooth the conversation. So, but this process creates such a huge social barrier, making the art world at a stagnant growth. On the contrary, Fresh Trust provides a decentralized promotional channel for people to directly support art or artists you love, which essentially, if your buddy is a student artist coming from a top student art school, and let me tell you this, each year, almost 90% of the art student with the craft, with the talent, who paid 60K a year for tuition, does not find a job after art school. Because each year, only the top galleries can make you into art fairs and be a star. So you left over a lot of students who has talent, but cannot support themselves as artists, and then has to wait tables in LA or Soho. I'm saying the very brutal truth, because me personally, I come from art family, so I have a lot of friends who go to the art route, but can make a living to sustain. There are a few lucky ones who get to know a couple gallery owners, and then the career take off. This very brutal, but sounds a lot like entertainment world. Just leave it there. So the Fresh Trust example, like we mentioned before, so beyond the treasure binding, you also have what you call the colophon, for which the Chinese painting, if you pass on to the next guy, the other guy, if he truly likes the painting, he'll tend to add his seal or add his commentary after painting. This value addition process becomes a part of the artwork. This is going to be huge for the art world because we bring this process onto blockchain. We bring it in a way that keeps anonymity because brutal truth, also another brutal truth, most people does not want to let you know which art they own, but most people want to sell one or two pieces from their collection. Anonymity is very important in the art world, where we were able to achieve that with blockchain. So Fresh Trust and Elastos. So when we decide to work with Elastos, we think it's really a home run for both of us, because Elastos allows the issuance of digital asset, also has a problem-seeking aspect of blockchain. This aligns perfectly with what we try to do with Fresh Trust. Moreover, Fresh Trust reflects the total value of Fresh Edition of an artwork. And Fresh Edition, think of that as a prints and moldables. The limited edition artwork on blockchain is solely based on Elastos. And also, when you guys think about adding token to an artwork, it's this irrevocable process. It's also a POS method, a proof of stake. But rather than proving which user owns the most token, it's going to be which artwork holds the most token. And this process can reflect and compare the intricate value of art on blockchain. The circulation of the token in the Fresh Trust, which is locked inside, will be achieved by Fresh Edition. How? We'll explain in the next slide. So Fresh Edition, after artworks has different number of Fresh Trust into them, how can we get the tokens recirculate back to the community? It's the same process that artists think about, is that after the artists sell 2 or 3 large oil paintings to the rich collectors, how can the artist create more presence in the art world? Well, the artist has already found a great solution. You just simply create more art, but you do not handmade them. You commission a studio to make them, and you sign it, or you say it's come from you. And this is called artist as a brand. It's very, very honest, very, I think, very bold assessment of the art world, but we just try to tell you the truth. Artist essentially is a brand. Ever since Andy Warhol, ever since, the Da Vinci, it's always a brand. Anything come from the brand sells. There sometimes you go to a gallery viewing, you see people holding an empty book of the artist, and then ask the artist sign it. After the artist sign it, you can directly flip it off on eBay. For, if it's from a star artist, you can sell for $1,000. But essentially the same thing as a limited artwork. Anything artist touches, if you're a brand as a good artist, it turns into gold. So same logic, we take it to blockchain. We allow the art owners to issue digital editions on blockchain, judging by the amount of fresh trust in an artwork. So if an artwork right now on the network has around 500 tokens, so the artist itself can choose to release how many editions he or she want to release. So if, for example, he or she releases 10 editions, so each edition going to be cost 50 tokens. And what people are buying with the 50 token is essentially a part of the artwork data. There's a huge distinction. It's not a part of the artwork, but it's a whole new set of artwork. It's a part of the artwork data coming from the artist's blockchain wallet. Because today, when people buy a cause, if you guys know cause, or if you know Basquiat, when people buy a Basquiat, the work is on paper. People buy it because it comes from Basquiat, because various sources verify it comes from Basquiat. You buy art because it comes from that artist, pure and simple. So we change that process on blockchain, which means you can sell that art to more people globally. Because one of the main problems with the prints and moldables today is that sometimes you have the Picasso worth $1,000 as a 500 edition. If you want to ship that thing to Ukraine or to UK from New York, well, sorry, the shipping costs, they're going to still put that in a huge crate, a wooden crate, because they want to protect the artwork. And then you're going to take you a month or two to get the artwork shipped to you. And so this process, as you can see, is very inefficient. It may be good if you're shipping a $5 million piece, but it's truly not worthwhile when we try to ship, like a $2,000 piece. But on blockchain, with Fresh Edition, people can claim. So imagine one day you buy this work from this artist, and then you're in Ukraine. The artist released edition in the United States, released 5 editions. So you stayed up the whole night to buy the edition at a time when the artist announced so. So you get your hands on edition. You can choose to display that in any medium you want. Because essentially, we ask each art owner to upload HD photos, or if it's sculpture, the 3D printing data to the platform. So you can choose to display it on paper, on canvas, or whatever. But the importance is that you get to prove you own this artwork from the artist. because each artwork gonna have a QR code that when you scan it, it shows that it comes from the artist's wallet address directly to yours. So the first edition owners can also trade this edition, just like when they trade a certificate, like on exchanges, because this is going to be quite interesting, and I think this is going to elevate the artwork to a whole new level. Because right now, when you buy an art, let it be collectible or the obscure artwork, shipping is always a concern. Most people right now, you ship a larger piece from Japan, either shipped by plane, which double or triple the shipping cost, or shipped by the freight, which by ship takes 2 to 3 months to the United States. So a lot of people shy away from buying art because most art are not easily accessible. It's not like when you buy, instantly it's here. But with first edition, with blockchain, we're able to achieve that because the proof of provenance is what collectors been seeking. And this is a direct example of how first edition works in our world, and they already have a precedent. On the bottom, as you can see, is Andy Warhol's very famous work, The Marilyn Monroe. This piece, because it's a unique piece, it's acrylic on canvas, which means Andy Warhol drew it himself. So the piece was auctioned off at 4.4 million. Where on the top, as you can see, if you're not from the art world, you might think, wow, they look almost the same. It's just a little bit of a color difference. Where that piece got sold for, $100,000. Why? Because if you can see clearly, that's a screen print for which Andy Warhol printed out around 250 editions. And this is one of the 250 with almost the same pattern, just different color code. And that's one got sold for 100,000 because it comes from Andy Warhol. Anything comes from Andy Warhol has value. If you have one, you can verify from Andy Warhol, I'll buy it. Because this is just how the art world works. And so it just shows you see the colors different. Well, let me tell you, there are a lot of other color variants that's made by Andy Warhol. So the Andy Warhol changed the bottom picture into a red background. That's another unique work. That's another 4.5 million. We'll come to the art world. So same thing goes for other artists. KAWS, Virgil Abloh. Virgil has been doing this, but pushing it to a whole new level with the whole Off-White. So going off a little bit on Off-White, Off-White essentially what they're selling is that they sell the unlimited edition artwork, but they create a limited edition by telling people it's gonna sold out very fast. Same thing for Supreme. Because when people like to buy something when it's scarce, and people want to buy it because the thing feels special, because other people think it feels special. So that's why the artist, if you're smart, you want to support yourself as an artist. You have to think about how to build yourself as a successful brand. And the first edition Elasos, just like we mentioned before, Elasos allows digital assets be issued and then be traded. This is a technical foundation for first edition. And the other things we already mentioned before, so. And to approach this, we did a quite interesting route because we did not do an ICO. We did the world's first ICD and abandoned ICO process. Out of the total 500 million token, we gave away 300 million. For anyone to claim one token, they need to do an art test of 100 questions. Well, the reason we do that are for 2 points. First, it comes from my direct experience as an ICO investor. Well, if you invest well, invest early last year, good for you. You get crazy returns. But if you invest sometime late in the game, December 2017 or January, you know how the market goes. Even the good tokens are not delivering, the 5 times, 10 times return. And not to mention certain projects coming from certain country that lose its value 90% or more. Just search online, I won't name which one, but you know which one. So you can see ICO is a good tool for a company to raise quick money, but it's at the expenses of the retail investors, where I can handle the financial risk myself, but what about someone from a developing country? What about a soccer mom from Nigeria or from Singapore who need to support 3 of her children? But then she realized that, well, I invest something in this token and right now I lose 90% money. Who do they go for? Easily. They do not have SEC to go for, so they go for their local version of authority. And who do the authority go for if they do not know technology? They go after technology as a whole. This is literally what's been happening in the whole blockchain world, is because you ask a bunch of retail investors who are not that sophisticated to invest in something. Yes, indeed, you liberate the access to finance investing, but you do not tell people how much they should comfortably invest. You do not have a way to filter through companies that's been doing the ICO. So you have this market, you have someone from, developing country that developed like 200 million Ponzi scheme and run away with everything. This has been happening in our today's age. So when we do this in the art world, when I first started doing this, one thing I know very clear after consulting my lawyer from New York as well from Switzerland is that if we have the capability to raise venture funding, which is the sole assessment of how good a company is, we do not need to go through ICO that draws a lot of attention on us negatively, as well as making retail investors potentially suffer from market volatility. Because even though a token may be good, what if the bigger players come in from the finance institution? What about the hedge funds coming in and then they short the whole market? You already see what happened earlier this year. I don't think it's a market going down or market being negative. It's just the major players, when they go in a market, the first thing they do is that they create FUD. Then they short the whole market. And then they get in at cheaper, and they drive up the market. This is what you call a cyclical progress of history. And it's happening in every single industry. So that's why we stay away from ICO. We did the first ICD because what we need to do is that we get a token to community. At the beginning, we do not care where the community is from, because the community is from globally. And after getting the token released, then it's about, in a process, we work hard to develop our own platform. Because the tokens are out there, because through the process, we have educated enough people about art. This makes the whole thing worthwhile. And we design our whole ICD test is that it's not going to be the same each week. Is that each week the test gets harder. And on week 3, we ask people to go to their local museums and galleries, and then you can take the test. Results has been very, very crazy. Out of total, we have around 110,000 people complete the test, and 89,000 people pass the test. And the total pass is about 140,000 people. And for that week 3 of the museum and gallery visit, we have around 35,000 people going to their local museums, taking photos, and thanking Fresco for them to learn more about art. I think we already, in a part, achieve our mission. Because in a week, Metropolitan Museum Art, it can handle around 15,000 people. But with us, a blockchain company, we let 30,000 people go to a museum globally. This is enough to raise their interest, and indeed it does. And also jumping on the first edition, think about in the future how museums globally gonna become a gold mine. Because Met as a museum, any museum, you're gonna hold around thousands of artworks. Right now, museums are in a very, very difficult time because museum cannot sustain on its own tickets. Museum, instead on Fresco, if they release blockchain editions of their artwork without hurting a single bit of the ownership of their physical art. But if Matt says it sells 100 editions of a piece on blockchain, think about how much money it can raise from its 300,000 collections. We're thinking of ways to not destroy the art world, but to help our world generate extra revenue. Because the best way to do so is to expand the art collecting population. When we go to a museum, right now today, sometimes they don't even allow you to take photos. Sometimes you can only take a photo and go. This does not create attachment. When do you create attachment with something? It's just like when do you create attachment with crypto? You have to first own it, and then you care about it. Same thing in art. You care about art when you become an art collector. Where with Fresco, we let more people globally can own a part of art on blockchain. So that's basically what I explained for the museums. As you can see, the next time in the future, hopefully next year we go to the museum, you can directly see how many fresh trusts in the painting. And when you scan the QR code, you can see whether there are fresh editions available, or you can choose to add fresh trusts to this painting if you truly like it. So this is a comparison of us with Elastos and why we are such a good fit. Because digital asset, when you talk about other digital assets, I think art has its own unique value, just like we said before. Art is probably something in this world where you can sell crazy high price without a solid explanation. It sounds funny, but just go to any auction house and see some pieces. If you don't understand, well, the people in the art world will say, sorry, you don't understand art. Where do you actually don't understand? Or they are trying to protect this industry, or they are trying to protect the people who bought it. Where what if you want to start collecting? Well, welcome to the game. You can be a part of art collecting, where safely store money in art. So this is the art world support. As you can see, we have talented student artists, as well as the DSL collection, which holds one of the largest Chinese contemporary art collection in the world, as well as the artists from Zayed Institute, which is one of the largest art institute in Abu Dhabi. And about our blockchain industry support, as you can see, things are quite interesting. When we reach out to Brock Pearson, Charles Hodgkinson on Twitter, and then show them what we can do with our blockchain, both of them reply in 10 minutes, which is totally out of shock at the beginning of the project. And then we realized there are companies that have support from one of the co-founders of Ethereum, and then raised $75 million. I won't say which one. But we have two supporters, and even with Elastos co-founder, Dr. Han, and Elastos founder, Dr. Chen, where we're releasing all the tokens for free. As you can see, I think we're playing for the bigger picture. We're thinking collectively as a community. We can raise a voice in the art world, telling more people that people deserve access to art. And when more people invest in art, it won't crush the system, but rather it will make the system flourish more. So yeah, this is all about Fresco. As you can see, because today it's a Sunday afternoon, so I go a little bit off the script. I just want to tell you guys, definitely look into art investing. Definitely from today, go to the online auction site and begin to know more about artists. You know it's a very safe way to store money, but just make sure when you go in with someone who knows art. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. My name is Frank Wang. I'm a co-founder and chairman of ViewChain. Thank you all for coming out on a Sunday afternoon. And there's one more reason that I want to thank you. The reason is you are the reason that I'll be on a Grand Opera House stage for the first time in my life. So I've been down to Los Angeles a dozen times. So Los Angeles and Hollywood, when that comes to mind, it gives people the impression of creativity and great entertainment content. So when it comes to ViewChain, what will bring that to mind? Zapier has literally hundreds of millions of users. So our goal is to bring several hundreds of million users and gracefully migrate that to the blockchain ecosystem like Elastos. Zapier is a file sharing tool. It's a very simple tool, just between two phones. You don't need the outside network. In developing countries where their data charges are high and the network is poor, people just use cell phones to swap files between themselves. We enjoyed very rapid growth. We hit 1 million users the first month we launched back in 2012. And since we have grown to 576 million users worldwide. Our user concentrations are in China, in Asia, in Middle East, and Latin America. Not so much in the US. So the reason for that viral growth is because of it's a killer app. Basically, it allows you to transfer any file at a very fast speed. For example, a 700 megabyte Android game can be transferred from my phone to your phone in under 30 seconds. Okay, and also it has no restriction on what kind of contents that you can transfer from my phone to your phone. So it's this kind of freedom and the fast speed that enables this kind of viral growth. So the cardinal rule of for internet user growth is you have to have a killer app. and then you have to have a very growth hacking strategy behind it. That explains the rapid growth for Zapier. So Zapier is essentially a peer-to-peer file sharing tool, a very simple tool. I've been in the P2P space for a long time. My previous company was a peer-to-peer Wi-Fi routing company. I sold that to a NASDAQ public company called Aruba Networks, now part of HP. So I've been in the P2P space for more than 15 years. So as you can see, I'm biased. So I pretty much see everything through the P2P lens, okay? And from Zapier migrated from a simple tool to share files P2P to a content user community. So basically, throughout the 6 years that we are in existence, we actually have tons of user data. For example, in Zapier, I have 2,000 labels in terms of the content that I consumed. Okay, so we actually we kind of try to segregate the users based on their interest. Okay, so we migrate from a tool to a content community. Okay, so we actually can enable content discovery, and later on, content transaction. So what is ViewChain? ViewChain has 3 components: the Zapier's users, large user base, and blockchain, of course. But I want to emphasize the IPFS part. May I have a show of hand that the percentage of people that have known something about IPFS? Please raise your hand. Okay. So IPFS basically is a decentralized storage system that's done by a group of young Stanford engineers. Okay, they're like 15 years behind me at Stanford. We actually think that IPFS can be greatly extended. We think that IPFS need to go mobile and social. Okay, IPFS, the original version, mostly there are PC daemons. There's no mobile clients. We think that a mobile client is essential because mobile clients are the main consumers for the storage system. And also, mobile clients, they can be contributors of contents to the ecosystem. Also, the interesting thing about a mobile client is behind every mobile phone, there's a real person. With real person, you come with social identity and social relationships. So if you add mobile client to a distributed storage system, you can add tons of user data, behavioral data for a user with real identity. Okay, we actually have accumulated 6 years of user data. We can pretty accurately recommend contents to users. So IPFS need to be extended to include mobile and social. That's a crucial point that I want to mention. So the Zapier takes care of the user base. IPFS, the mobile IPFS, that's Zapier version, that breaks through the storage limitation of mobile phones. So virtually the phone will have unlimited content choices with this choice, as we will see in the next slide. Of course, blockchain provides the trust piece. It enables copyright tracking and also token rewards for all players. So Zapier is kind of the 3-in-1. The ViewChain is 3-in-1. Since this is Hollywood, I think many people will be concerned about DRM, the copyright protection. Okay, so our view is the copyright protection is in its infancy, and with blockchain, it needs to be done at 3 levels. I think the hardware level is definitely needed. ARM ecosystem has this great hardware piece called Trust Zone. Basically, it's a tiny CPU inside the ARM CPU. It provides the hardware-enabled kind of the trust based for DRM, and basically the trust zone is a separate CPU. It can run this tiny kernel, which is totally separate from the host OS and the host CPU. On top of the hardware, then we have the Lattice VM, which provides the OS level protection. And on top of that, we have the blockchain copyright tracking. So we may come back to that at the Q&A session. So the goal of ViewChain is we want to make every phone a content store. So to do that, we need all three pieces. We need the Zapier user base, we need the mobile IPFS, we need blockchain. So I do have a quick demo to show, but since the stage is now set up to do demo, you would have to trust me on the result, on the correctness of the demo. I can show the full demo off stage. Okay. So basically, what we are doing is, with the mobile phone, you can add any local file on your phone to the IPFS. Also, you can browse through all the files visible to this iPhone, to this Android phone on the IPFS system. And then you can just ping it, you add it, whichever way you want, okay? And note that in the mobile IP system, the mobile IPFS client need to be bind to a certain PC, because the phone does not provide enough storage to contribute to the IPFS storage system. But it actually is a very, like I said before, it's a very good consumer. Also, a very good user data provider for the whole system. So it's very important. As we will see later on, this is important to the IPFS swarm, okay? So the demo goes like this. So I could take a picture of this crowd, a live picture or a live video, and it's local on my phone. I could add that with one click to the IPFS system, and then it's going to be broadcasted throughout the whole system. And you guys would be able to scan the QR code and see the file that I just published. Okay, so we'll do that full demo later on. But right now, I have a favor to ask you, because my engineers, they actually worked until 2 a.m. last night to finish the demo, and it worked. So I would like to invite you guys to give a round of applause to the great engineers of the ViewChain team. Thank you very much. Well, I hope that the demo is as good as last night's. So in the ViewChain system, we want to promote the contents in the following way. Each cell phone, the content store, has two parts. The storefront. Storefront only publishes the short videos. Those type of short videos free of copyright infringement issues. Okay. The US copyright says that if you can do 1/10 or 1/12 of the long video, then with some artistic modification, yeah, then you're fine. So the storefront, only legal short video contents. At the back room, we have the VIP contents. These are the paid contents. You have to pay to view those contents. Okay, and the front side, actually, we have built an app called CoStar. So basically, you can edit any video. You can add yourself, just like doing a selfie. You can add yourself as a TV anchor. And we can paste that video to the original movie. And then you are like a TV commentator in that movie clip. Okay. We have data showing that a pretty movie actress can improve the viewership by maybe 50 times with some insightful and interesting contents, and also kind of a photogenic face. Okay, so we found it very, very interesting. Some movie clips with human touch can do wonders. So we have this complete system that's already built out. The other interesting thing is I have 10,000 followers in the Zapier system. My specialty is I specialize in movies based on true events. Over the past 3 years, I've accumulated these 10,000 users based on the 3,000 short video clips that I have published. Okay, and these viewers are my loyal followers. So sometimes I ask them to promote my site, and they're more than happy to do that for me. Okay, and we'll see with blockchain we can do some interesting things with that. This slide actually talks about the IPFS swarm. Okay, swarm actually in the original IPFS system is a very difficult topic, but with the Zapier hundreds of millions of users and user data, it's actually natural for us. For example, I am a small-time kind of YouTuber, if you like. I have 10,000 followers. The biggest YouTuber that we have is, he has like 540,000 followers. And each one has his or her own specialty. For example, somebody specializes in horror movies. So this person, with his 100,000 users, scattered around the world, but we would be able to actually push new horror movies and horror movie clips to a PC near him or her. Okay, so we actually have natural segregation, a precise and natural segregation of content users. So we don't need to do the difficult sharding. That's another technical term, but we can do the swarms very, very efficiently with large user base and user data. This is a high-level diagram showing that different stakeholders in the ecosystem. So we have the creators of contents. Of course, they will register their copyrights on the blockchain, which will be tracked and protected. And the curators, who merely collects the contents and promotes the contents. Usually the curator would register their profile and their digital assets onto the chain. I'll come to what amounts to their digital assets later on. Basically, their followers are their digital assets. Okay, so the curators basically publish to the whole blockchain saying that I have this amount of contents, I have this amount of followers. Come visit me. Okay. So in the interest of time, I'm going to fast forward on some of the slides. And we have a punishment and reward system. Whenever we see some copyright infringement, there will be a penalty. Okay. If we see people doing the right things, for example, if they attract more visitors, more followers, they will be rewarded. Okay. And all this can be done in a fully decentralized way on a blockchain. This shows the token flow. This leads to the token economics. So curators, the store owners, these are the central players in the whole system. And they would be the central spot to collect the tokens as their work. And also it's a central point to distribute the tokens. For example, the curators, if they attract a large number of users, with viewers' eyeball, they may attract some payment for the contents. Also, they may attract advertising revenue. So they do get paid in tokens. And once they get tokens, they need to pay a few guys. They need to pay the IPFS storage guys. Sometimes they need to pay their viewers. They need to incentivize their viewers and followers to promote their contents on their behalf. Okay. They of course need to pay the gas fee, the equivalent of gas fee to the ViewChain platform. This is a very interesting slide that I want to spend more time on. So basically, we have a very interesting view chain system. Each view chain store owned by the curators has 3 components: the storage piece, which is the mobile social IPFS piece. And then we have the bandwidth. Of course, this guy needs to have bandwidth, shared bandwidth. And this guy needs to have a lot of collected contents, legal contents in the storefront, and some paid contents in the store backroom. And how does mining work? The curator does the mining in the following way. Basically, he needs to put up some storage, and he needs to pledge that storage. Okay. So of course, if you want to do the content distribution business, you need to store a certain amount of contents. Okay. The storage piece could be your PC, it could be a NAS. This guy could be a small-time kind of CDM, what have you. So the storage piece is the proof of storage is very well researched. Okay, it can be the storage contribution to the mining process can be very detailed examined. I'll spare you the details. The content caching piece, that's also fairly well documented. It's can be done in a very well researched fashion on a blockchain. So a content owner, the store owner, the curator, they have the 3 pieces: the storage, the content, and the bandwidth. He would be able to do mining in a fully decentralized way on a blockchain. And his contribution, if we calculate all these 3 different pieces, will be fairly complicated. But luckily, we can measure that in a fully decentralized way based on the results, okay? Based on the percentage of eyeball the user come to his site to view the contents. So this can be done, for example, for my 10,000 users, each one of my users viewing the content can be done in a fully distributed fashion between me and my viewer. Okay, we can accurately prove how much time he spent on my site and how many contents that he viewed. This is important because all the this view gold, the top token is called view gold. This is our utility token and stable token. And this is earned through this mining process, the 3-in-1 mining process that the content owner serve the users. Okay, so this is earned by the storage, by the content caching, and by the content selection piece, and measured by how many visitors and followers and how many interactions this content owner can have. Okay, the bottom piece called View Silver. View Silver basically is the token payout process. Okay, so suppose there are 2 curators like me. Each one has 10,000 followers. Okay, and I'm going to hold on my view gold. I'm not going to spend the view gold. Whereas my competition, he spent the 10,000 view gold that he earned. And he spent 8,000 view gold on his followers. And he asked his followers to promote his site. Whenever a follower attracts his friend to the site, a new visitor, a new follower, and this viewer will get rewarded, payout from the content owner's token pocket. Okay, so in this way, my competition will upstage me. He may grow to 20,000 followers. Okay. More than double my followers. So this is how we try to encourage the curators to distribute their tokens. Once they have more visitors, more followers, the view chain will reward them because this is the digital asset. We measure the digital assets in the number of visitors, number of followers, number of interactions. Okay, we measure the outcome of the content store. Okay, so in this way, we actually have both the token earning side. We also have the token payout side. Okay, so in this way, we want to have a balance. So why is that important? What we want to build is as the following. We want to build a mobile IPFS storage and distributed content storage middleware utility for many public chains. So we are going to first work with Elastos. We are going to provide the mobile IPFS storage. When we have incentivized a number of users using their PC or NAS or their CDM to provide mobile storage, distributed storage for the Elastos ecosystem, they will get rewarded not only in the Elastos token, which is ELA, they will also be rewarded in View Gold. So in this way, these viewers are token-holding community members, okay? And also the contribution piece, they will own the community tokens in similar ways. In this way, we can leverage the hundreds of millions of users, a large user base of Zapier. We want to convert them to token-holding community members. And we can replicate this model with other blockchain ecosystem. So this way, we naturally and gracefully migrate the P2P tool users to token holders. And why is this valuable? If you have, let's say you have a system with 576 tool users and maybe 100,000 PC IPFS nodes earning tokens, and you have the IPFS providers in the 100,000 numbers, and you also have the viewers owning tokens. You have the hundreds of thousands the curators owning tokens. Just imagine if we want to move this force to any kind of token exchanges or to any ecosystem, this is going to be a force to be reckoned with. Okay, so this is the value of the 3-in-1. Okay. To sum it up, we are going against the status quo, which is the centralized content distribution system. These are like the Hollywood, the big copyright owners, and in China it's Tencent Video and iQIYI. So in the centralized system, they do the content distribution, they do the promotion in a centralized way. Okay, for a movie, if the movie has $100 million in budget, probably I would guess 40 to 60 million will be spent in marketing expenditure in promoting the movie. We want to do it in a drastically different way. Okay, so as you can see, we can have a crowdsourcing kind of content promotion model. The fans of this movie can be curators. They can create short video contents on their own, and they get rewarded by creating these contents because they have certain eyeballs from the viewers. And they can, with the maybe 10,000 tokens they get, they can incentivize their followers to do the promotion for their site. So in this way, we have a multi-level marketing scheme to promote the contents. So we, with the tokens, we can have higher percentage of split of revenue to these stakeholders. And we not only promote the long videos, what we found is that people actually, well, at least this data is true in China. The young folks, 20-something people, they actually view 10 short videos versus viewing one long video. So that's the amount of short video that they're consuming. Okay, so we not only help distribute the long video, but we also create high-quality UGCs because they're incentivized. The highest quality UGC creators, they get the most tokens. So we do have high-quality UGCs. Okay, so it's a combination of short video and long video. And the revenue model, you're familiar with the status quo, but we actually, we think we can create a new and incremental revenue source with this model. Just imagine each curator virtual store on each phone is tantamount to a Blockbuster virtual store on your phone. Okay, they're small-time video distributors for sure, but if you but if they number in millions, that's going to generate sizable distribution revenue. What's also interesting, this is actually suggested by one of our investors, who is the head of ARM China, now a close associate of the head of SoftBank. ARM has this ecosystem of a lot of heavyweights, Hollywood copyright owners. They partner with ARM for DRM reasons. But there are a lot of independent producers from Hollywood or from all over the world. They have difficulty in attracting funding to get their projects underway. We talked to a number of independent producers. They're fairly interested they may have funding for producing maybe 3-minute segments of their content, but once they produce that initial segment, the clip, we could migrate the right audience to their site, and then they can do crowdsourcing funding for their content. And this way, we're not only providing the distribution channel for these independent producers, we also provide a viable crowdsourcing funding source for these independent producers. Our goal is we want to be what's SoundCloud for music. We want to be that. We want to be the SoundCloud for video distribution. Our investors include the founders of Bitmain, so on and so forth. So I suppose that concludes my presentation. Thank you all.
Hi, I'm Han, former CTO of WeatherBlock as of Friday. But we'll get into that because it's an interesting journey. So WeatherBlock is a blockchain company, but they started as a device manufacturer, Blue Sky, making weather sensors, which is very interesting because they were able to crowdsource this project and get about 40,000 sensors out to the world. Now their sensors are basically the sky and the storm. And weather, you wouldn't think of it as very interesting as of yet, because most of the weather that you think about now has been around or the technology has been around for about 20 to 30 years. But what's interesting about Blue Sky was that they were allowing these sensors to be installed in folks' homes. And what that does is it allows for crowdsourced information of weather at a hyper-local level. Hyper-local level means that if they could get these sensors in a 2-meter square grid within a city, then they'll be able to predict a lot of weather at near terrestrial levels. So this project itself was very interesting to me because when they asked me to join as an advisor, it was basically to get them onto a blockchain. Right? But to get sensors onto a blockchain is not a very easy thing to do, right? It's not just these sensors. These sensors have to talk to a node. So we have to go into production of a node device, which is their Nexus. But their node device also has, running a business, you have to balance performance and cost. So performance within blockchain is very problematic currently. Because of the fact that most of the traditional blockchain companies like EOS and Neo and Blockstack are monolithic systems. And I'll get into that in a little bit to explain. But for IoT, you need to be able to put a OS on a SoC, which is a system on chip, right? And you need to do it at a very reasonable cost. So those are the challenges that I had with just looking at this project initially, but still something that I think we need to endeavor to do. And by the way, I only have 10 minutes, so I'm going to rush through all this. So, the journey into the rabbit hole. The challenge: build a solution that runs on low power, pure nodes within communities in a wider network while maintaining security and privacy with integrity on publicly verifiable technology through a discrete interoperability layer. That's a lot. That's not just a box. That's not just a blockchain. That's making sure everything works together, right? But the biggest problem is you have to make sure that people trust your system. Once that box leaves your manufacturing warehouse, you don't own it anymore. So you got to lock it down. You got to make sure that those devices cannot be hacked, right? Once a device is hacked, then all the tokens, all the processes within your processes in your blockchain are at risk. So as I was looking into this, I had to look at various things and looking specifically at the lower level operating system, the boot processes, the bootstrapping into an OS, the bootstrapping into the peer network, and again, this whole rabbit hole just started to come up. Because of the fact that it's not just one thing, it's a combination of all of these things. And to make this work, we have to give the consumers the ability to trust the network. But not only that, we need to make sure that the developers also, as they're creating things, trust the network, and as well as the device manufacturers. So we need several things. Identity is the biggest key, but not just discrete, centralized identity. We need blockchain identity. We need user identity. We need device identity. We also need to have applications that are verifiable with their own source identity. So I have a lot of friends within Block One, EOS. A lot of my developers went to go work for them. So I asked them, well, what is the current platform requirements, specifications for running EOS? And they came back and said, well, you need at least a single core Intel box with at least 32 gigs of RAM. You can't do that on IoT, right? You can't. You need to run it on an ARM. You need to run it on 4 gigs of RAM. You need 32 gigs of eMMC. And you need to lock it all down from boot to bootstrap to bootstrap. Okay. So I started looking and asking questions about various other operating systems. And at WeatherBlock, we have another advisor, Kevin, who is now with Elastos, and he brought Rong to meet with us. And I was actually flabbergasted. Elastos can run on a mobile device. It could run on a low power processor. Some Cortex A53s and 4 gigs of RAM and 32 gigs eMMC, which at a retail cost, a box like that will run about $150 to $200, right? Which is very attractive to IoT manufacturers and WeatherBlock as well, because we will be manufacturing those boxes. So Elastos was the choice. Elastos is, and I think, in my opinion, because of the fact that I have done a lot of research on various blockchains, that Elastos has a huge opportunity in this space. First off, it's a decentralized OS first versus a blockchain OS. Do you understand what that means? It started as an operating system and then implemented on blockchain. Instead of a blockchain implementing an operating system. That's huge. And the reason why is it's not about the peers in the network. It is about the peers, actually, not about integrating the edges, not integrating just mobile devices. Mobile devices and low-power devices are actually peers in the network. And then this third point, I think, is really, really important. Compartmentalized versus monolithic. I talked about this earlier, okay? Monolithic blockchains are basically state machines, right? Well, all blockchains are state machines. But if you look at Ethereum, Bitcoin, very simplistic monolithic systems, their processes run fairly innocuous within their peer network, unless you get CryptoKitty, right? And that's the problem, you know, with monolithic systems. Things like CryptoKitty can take down a whole system, right? But then they start talking about secondary chains, right? Side chains. But even then, on a side chain, you could take down the side chain. But there's like, well, no, we make sure that it's separated. But then you eventually have to do transfer of assets between the main chain and the side chain. And that's where it becomes problematic. But then you get to EOS. EOS is talking about inter-blockchain communication. Inter-blockchain communication is not a Ethereum decentralized transaction exchange where they transact between ERC20 tokens. It's about transacting between an Ethereum and a Bitcoin, right? Online. But why would that be problematic? It's problematic because of the fact that there is a thing called time. Time is a problem with blockchains. Bitcoin takes 10 minutes to process, and then you have to wait at least 5 cycles after, right? Ethereum takes 3 minutes if it's not under load. But in a smart contract on an IBC, you have to wait not only 10 minutes plus 3 minutes, but also processing time to make sure that both transactions occur and both transactions did not fail. And if they did fail, then you have to revert it. So time itself is the issue because if you think about it, all those processes times how many transactions or smart contracts that are being run will eventually need a lot of CPU cycles, right? Eventually. So Elastos in itself has the ability to compartmentalize, meaning it could take various pieces of those smart contract processes and just run them individually and then instantiate the next process or the next step in the smart contract, which I think is a very exciting thing eventually, that we'll be able to run it on small, low-powered peer network hardware across a wider network. Now, that goes into the DApp interoperability versus smart contracts. And Ron was talking about this. The original smart contract concept in itself is very antiquated. It's very 1, 2, 3 steps, whatever, right? And it doesn't allow for contract chaining. It doesn't allow for various other types of arbitration processes and things like that. Not saying that in the future it wouldn't, because we're probably going to be building that out. But if we build those types of processes into discrete DApp processes, DApp modules, then we'll be able to just eventually just combine and then feed in variables and whatnot to then complete a full contract in its eventuality and entirety. So that's why I think my 10 minutes are up. I think that Elastos is going to be a very key player in the future. And as a former WeatherBlock CTO, I hope to continue to work with them to actually build out this infrastructure, because I think the promise of what this is going to be so much more vast than what we're thinking of at this point in time. Thanks.
So obviously, I know that Rome, and especially Ron and Han would say, "Oh, hey, this is not only for blockchain," but you know, blockchain has been a very hot topic, and we've been discussing. So of course, it's an ecosystem, but I'm sure everyone wants to learn about how the blockchain, as a part of this ecosystem, can benefit the entertainment and art industry.
During the break, some of you are busy having food, but then we had a very interesting discussion during the break. Someone from apparently from Hollywood was talking about DRMs and virtual machines. Just to paraphrase what we discussed during the break, and currently there are different kinds of DRM algorithms. Most of them are based out of different kinds of operating systems. Say one DRM for Windows, the other one for Android, the other one for the iOS. Because DRM itself in the media player is not reliable, so they have to kind of build their roots back into the operating system, and the operating system build their trust root into the hardware built into so-called trust zone. Basically, that's the chain of trust. What we're saying is that not only from the trust zone to the hardware to the operating system to the content, we're also building another line of trust from the blockchain. And there we know how many modules we can build out of a virtual machine. During my talk, I mentioned that Microsoft is getting rid of its Windows team. The reason why they could get rid of the Windows team, there's another fact. Currently, they call it something called a universal computing, meaning one operating system, one size fits all, like a phone, tablet, and game, Xbox, and a cloud. They are have unified sets of system APIs, which is also hard to achieve, but then it's achieved already. That's just a fact. So that said, that equivalent saying, we know how many number of DLL modules for phone or for PC or for game machines, because we don't have drivers. If you don't have driver, then nobody is poking to your system. If nobody poking your system, then after it's assembled out of the hardware manufacturer, it's a fixed number. If it's a fixed number, then we can keep track of how many of them put the hashes into blockchain. And after we build the blockchain, trace back to the number of modules, then we build the virtual machines. How many modules are virtual machines? So step by step, we put another chain of trust back into the blockchain, together with the trust chain into the hardware. Put them two of them together, we build the virtual machine. Instead of the DRMs built out of a niche operating system, then we can have one DRM for only one open sourced virtual machine. There's a possibility I really like to elaborate after this meeting. That'll be an interesting topic to talk about.
Actually, I have similar thoughts to Rong, but I would also add there's another layer for the trust zone, and it's identity of the person that has access to that content. Now, we could put identity on blockchain or some similar public type of ledger that will allow for things like single-use processes, multi-use processes, or indefinite ownership. And that way, you actually own the content of whatever you purchased, not the ecosystem that you purchased it from. Meaning that if you had an Android device, you could watch the movie on Android. If you had a Mac device, you could watch it on your Mac device. And across the board, that's how it should be, because then it puts the ownership back to you instead of to those individual companies. And I had a discussion as well where, you know, if you lose your, or if you cross ecosystems, you go from a Samsung phone to an iPhone, you actually lose the ownership of your content. And that just, you know, for me, why would you have to continue to purchase if you do purchase content in another ecosystem, right? So I think blockchain and facilities of public ledgers will allow for identity to be also another trust zone layer that will do like multi-sigs against a user ID to the operating system to the content. And that will allow for single use or whatever type of use cases that is necessary for that content. Now, being said, the content in itself would not be replicated. It would still be stored in a wider repository, but it's authentication to that with signatures and keys.
What's interesting is the copyright issue or DRM issue, I think is more than a technical issue. For example, there are a different class of the contents, like short video. In China, the top short video sites, Kuaishou and Toutiao, they have the following rules. For the short video content creators, if you upload your content to the centralized website, the platform rule says that you immediately agree to the following. You and the platform jointly own the copyrights. I'm not familiar with YouTube, but I think YouTube have a similar rules. So I think this is absurd if you look at it in a long-term view. And we have seen changes in this area. It used to be pictures in China. They are not very well protected copyright-wise. But right now there are public companies. They're doing the copyright protection for pictures in China. They become big revenue generators, become public companies. So I think beside the long video, the heavy copyright material, we still have some, I would call it light copyright contents. The short video creators, because we create tons of short videos, we found that creating a high quality short video is no small task. Takes a lot of talent, takes a lot of time and resources. So I think protecting short video and similar contents, these are also important. So I think blockchain actually is fairly close to ideal in protecting that, kind of in the following way. So a short video creator, when they upload their short video, he or she can immediately register the copyright of the short video on the blockchain, which is immutable. Also, the blockchain, if you have digital assets on the blockchain, people's real identity, like the sidechain of Elastos, if you have the proof of identity of people it creates it greatly increases the penalty for cheats, right? If you want to infringe on the copyright of other people, like the other two panelists said, this greatly increase the penalty. So I think the heavy copyright contents, they are well researched. There are a lot of well researched contents, but there are new things, a new solution that come with blockchain.
Another point I want to add is there's people saying that when the movie being previewed before it's released, then it's being pirated already and spreading out into the market. Because during my talk, I was talking about something, instead of distributing the contents, you distribute binaries. You make the content into binaries, and the binaries running in virtual machines. So every time the film binary being executed, it could be actually getting the hardware footprint, get the hardware serial number, and to make it a watermark into the showing. So if you take a video camera shooting out of a screen of a computer, actually got a watermark, and watermark of every niche of the hardware. So we know we can find immediately which hardware your video shoot it from, right? So holding that person liable. So if you distribute film contents, the data contents, even though it's had a watermark, but the watermark is the same for all hardware, right? Instead of each hardware has its own individual watermark, which is completely different story. We can, every time it runs, right, we can generate that watermark on the fly.
Yeah, also to add on to that, I think blockchain for art and entertainment industry is truly, sum of one line is truly to let more people to do what they love, to let more people choose a profession they want. Because you come to think about how internet has already been doing this. You take a look at it, how YouTube, there are certain influencers on YouTube, such as Jake and Logan Paul, which in the traditional industry, they try to make it as artists. But where do they get? They do not get the exposure because it's a people, the authority that says, okay, you're verified as artists, then you can be one. It's an agency that's doing that. But in the internet age, we have already seen the shift that people are deciding whether do they like this actor. That's why you see people like Logan Paul and Jake Paul, right now they're having hundreds of millions of followers, and they were able to, again, then gain the mainstream adoption through Disney, through the major corporation. I think what's next for the blockchain is truly everyone can have the opportunity to decide whether that entertainer or that artist is the one you like. And we can truly turn that view into monetary aspect for the content creator. I think this internet's already doing that, but as you can see, after Logan Paul gets certain view, after artists become famous online, they still need a gallery in real life to convert that kind of traffic into revenue. But with blockchain, where all the content creator can generate profit directly on chain, and all the other patrons can directly support the content creator they like, I think this is going to be huge for both art and entertainment industry.
All right, so thank you for your answers. And so my next question is, why would you choose Elastos as an infrastructure for you to build your platform? I know Han already, mentioned a lot about, why Elastos is the best, but so feel free to add more if you have more.
Yeah, I mean, I think for IoT, as I was looking at mobile operating systems and other types of operating systems, they just didn't compare because they were either too centralized or too niche market, or they were just too embedded into certain type of devices. The beauty of what I see with Elastos is the potential to cross many boundaries, many devices. And if you start at the smallest device, then you can expand to a wider base. whereas other folks are starting at a larger base, and it's going to be very difficult for them in the future to actually get into the IoT market.
There are a couple of reasons that we are in close partnership with Elastos. There are technical and non-technical reasons. So let's first talk about the mindset of the Elastos team. So from my observation, I looked at several blockchain projects, and I saw their investors asking the founders of these blockchain projects. The question is interesting. What's your killer app for your project or for your ICO? I found that many blockchain founders, project founders cannot, even the very top ones, cannot answer that very well. Okay, so maybe the people from blockchain world, they may discard the question as people from the classic internet world or the kind of old-fashioned the internet world. But in my humble opinion, I looked at the BTC and Ethereum. Both actually have killer apps. And I think that partially explains their huge successes. So I think I would venture to ask, for a project, a blockchain project, we also need to have the mentality of what hard problems do you solve for your users? What needs of the users do you fulfill? What are the user growth are you going to have, right? So I think this is the mentality I saw in the Elastos team. They have this. They were former OS guys, so they're very used to kind of having APIs, have standardized APIs, and foster the DApp kind of ecosystem in their huge ecosystem. So it's no small task to support the ecosystem. If you look back on the success of Windows and Unix, you will see that it's not a single technology or even a bunch of technology that wins the war. It's the ecosystem, how many developers you have, how many users you have, right? So I think these lessons cannot be lost. Somehow, it's just the young geniuses of blockchain world just totally disregard that. So this is the part I don't understand. So I work with people I can understand. That would first include the Elastos guys. So number one reason, like Kang had quite capably summarized, is DApp interoperability, right? The second reason are technical. I think we find that well, in our view, blockchain is good at certain things. It's not good at everything, right? So we need to build a lot of things around it to support it. It's not only about just pursuing TPX or your sharding is the greatest or what have you, but it's about you build a set of technologies and make them work well together. For example, Elastos has Carrier, and they put a lot of emphasis on building the P2P networking that built on top of the devices, but right underneath to support the blockchain. And in the Elastos P2P, which is called Carrier, and they actually strongly invite us to work with Elastos to have in-depth integration of the P2P system of our mobile IP system. So these are the tight integration that we need to make the whole thing work. The other example is we have the mobile IPFS, and that will work with the Elastos sidechain, okay? And how to make the movement of digital assets on mobile IPFS and the integration of the Elastos sidechain, which also has Ella as a token, make that an atomic operation. This is much more involved than most people think. It requires close integration of both teams. So it takes this kind of technical foresight and the right mentality to be the right public chain for the DApp guys to build their apps on.
Here's some of my reflections on the issue. During 1992, when Linux came out, people now are so used to Linux being successful. But back into 92, when Linux first came out, actually Linux was single-handedly written by Linus Torvalds. I was a master student, right? At that time, I was at Microsoft Research kernel team. So I did a little bit of a comparison of both. And of course, there's no way one single-handed master graduate competing with Microsoft Research at that point. But then why Linux was so successful? As I mentioned, Windows was a machine OS, the device OS. Linux was too, but then just happened to be 92, right? Mosaic came out. The internet turned into a consumer mass market phenomena. So then, not only we need to deal with devices, we need to deal with devices on both ends of the internet. So that's actually, people need to debug, not only on one device, they need to debug device and server at the same time. So then open source helps to debug end-to-end solutions, right? So that's actually the key, being at the right place at the right time. So then Linux grow out of this weakness, or so to speak, right? So now we're talking about, we have blockchains, then we're building a peer-to-peer network, and then we have so many big players, and who is the bigger one? How do we make them decentralized? How do we make them kind of agree on a common platform? So the platform has to be open sourced. That's a key, and I do believe Elastos at this point is at the right place at the right time.
Yeah, besides that, I also want to share my personal anecdote with the whole Elastos team. So I first get a dive into Elastos at a conference in Boston. That's earlier this year, where Harvard University called Block Invest. It's at that conference, I did a presentation about Fresco, and then afterwards, Elastos co-founder, Dr. Sunny Han Feng, he added my WeChat and said, we should meet up in New York. I was like, okay, let's do it. And then what I did not expect was a 5-hour meeting of Dr. Han talking about points from our white paper, talking with me about art, talking about how he wants to support emerging artists. I was very shocked. And then it's a month after, then in the New York TCFA conference, that I met Dr. Chen after the conference, and Dr. Chen directly delved in and said, okay, here's what you guys gonna do technical-wise. Here's how we should collaborate together. Like, I'm very moved for that as a sort of like, we are ourselves are building platform for artists. We have also talked with other public chain platforms with office in New York. That's one thing I do not expect from such a solid project that truly directly delve into what need to do and directly know so much about the decentralized application on their platform. I think this is kind of focus that want me to team up with Elastos. And I think the other reason is, again, the carry on of this effect, where the other public chain, a lot of them care so much about token price. And every day in their group, you see win move and all those kind of stuff. Elastos is one of the projects I think I truly adhere to what I believe in as a financial investor, because I invest myself in small startups. I think one key thing that most people in the blockchain community, I'll say very straight, they're not here to know about investing. If you know anything about investing, you know one thing to bring return. It's exactly what Warren Buffett said. You have to believe in the project, and then you hold on for 5 or 6 years, and then you see the result. This is the same thing for investing artists. This is the same thing for investing in anything. And what I like about Elastos team is that they truly dig into the technical aspect. without caring so much about token price. They focus on building the community truly organically, just like what Faye has organized in the Silicon Valley. A lot of developer meetup, people discussing the engineering aspect of Elastos. How can we make the hosting better? I think this is the right attitude to do anything. And just to, because right now the blockchain community has a lot of FUD. And the FUD is not created by the outside authorities. It's created by people in the circle who are too hasty. And that's what I think we want to partner with Elastos. Another thing, just a little side note I want to mention is that I think Elastos also goes back to where I'm from, community-wise. I'm originally from Beijing, China. And Elastos right now is definitely the best project coming from China with the academic support, as well as the institutional support. So, and also we're here, I think by working with Elastos, also fills in with my non-national pride. I think it's very narrow in the perspective. It's a community pride. It's almost like a community recognition. I think it's for us, we want to prove that as Chinese from the community. Like, we're not just here who cannot make changes, who just here to do things. We're here that can create change. And we're here just as cool as other community. We know about Biggie and Tupac, and we're thinking about the way how can we solve problem from the foundationally for content creator. I think we're here to represent the kind of like new generation of Chinese, despite the age. It's about whether you're here wanting to do that change.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. So, yeah, Royce, mentioned the community. And community is definitely something very special when it comes to blockchain projects. Of course, we're here not talking about how many people are, holding how many kinds of tokens. But my next question is actually, how do people can be involved? So I wanted to ask you guys, how many of you, because I know Frank asked how many of you know IPFS, and I wanted to ask you guys how many of you are developers? Okay, so like 3 of you. So which means, why are you here, as community members? And how can you be involved? And you definitely want to be involved. So I wanted to also ask everybody here, you guys are founders of each project. So you also realize, like Roy said, community is very important. So how can they be involved, and how can the community be involved even if they're not developers?
So I will start with, so right now people can involve your project. First, the ICD test is still running. So you can go online, go to your local museum, take a photo, or talk with your friends about art, and then shoot a video on YouTube, and then do the art test. If you pass, you can get a token. Straight up, very simple. And also the other thing that we're expanding our team very fast, because we realize that art, you want more people to know about art. First, you need to get people passionate about art. Through our test, we get you to know that a basket yacht's price can go from $110 million all the way down to $3,000 for the edition, and still consider it art. We just think you should talk with your friends more. And also, we are actually building our team. We're hiring the Fresco ambassadors, for which if you know the artist, if you know any artist, either student artists or the artists in galleries, or if you know your art professor, just tell them about Fresco. Don't say you're involved. Asking them whether this idea works, and see what they speak back to you. Because I think that's what's unique about us, is that we are a group of art people that want to use technology as a tool to solve this thing, rather than you use the technology to come in to disrupt the whole system. Disruption works in certain industry, but in the case of finance and art, you can say how Goldman Sachs evolves. Like, go back to the word I said, you can never kill a Goliath. Goliath evolves. As David, the new generation of David, you work with a Goliath. Goliath beat the back. Goliath who supports you, and you as David push through the changes. Thank you.
Well, definitely the young generation knows much more than the older one. So the older one only knows one thing: shoot a photo of yourself, prove you are here in this theater. You get 1 ELA. That's worth about $40. Pure and simple. By the way, just take a photo of a selfie of yourself of the background theater and send an email to Faye. I'll personally give you a ELA.
Wow, it's hard to top that. So, but I think, yeah, we are willing to give out vehicle tokens, not as valuable, but we are in that community spirit. But more seriously, I think in Chinese there is a saying, rather than give people a fish, you teach them how to fish. So in my line of work, we deal with a lot of the short video content creators. So I met a lot of young film school graduates. I got the first-hand knowledge of what starving artist means. Okay, these are very talented. Through hard selection, just maybe the admission rate is 1 in 1,000 in top Chinese film schools, but they're struggling financially, also artistically. So what the problem is, the artistic creation industry, kind of film, music, what have you, the people in power are people like us, the old guys, okay? But in the art and creativity industry, once you're, maybe it's true in China, once you're kind of 5 years removed from the first line battle, then you're pretty much out of date. But so there's a huge gap between the people who make decisions and the people who are really creative. Okay, the people who are in power does not have the creative juice anymore, but the people who can create, they do not have the resources. And blockchain is going to give us a glimpse of hope, or maybe a lot of hope. So I work with a lot of young artists. They keep asking me, when can I open this content store, the mobile content store, where I can just create my own video, become a huge influencer? In the past 5 years, a lot of this happened in China. Young artists come out of nowhere. They become the influencers with 30 million kind of followers. This happened many times, over and over again in China. So with blockchain, it's going to further kind of decentralize that. Okay, by that I mean when you are good, you don't have to rely on certain agents, powerful agents, or powerful studio boss opinion. If the people are behind you, if your community is behind you, then you really have a shot to rise to the top. So I think that's what blockchain means for the young artist or the creative type in Hollywood.
Wow, I don't know if I could add anything else to that. I can only think of, is there a program where you could just tell 2 of your friends to join and they get ELAs and they invite 2 friends and they invite 2 friends, do like a Wayne's World type of thing. And then pretty soon, we get all this latent talent that's out there. And it's not just about developers, it's about, content creators, it's about various other types of talents that folks have that can contribute to an ecosystem. I mean, decentralization is not about just redistribution of wealth, but it's also about redistribution of risk. It's about a shared economy. It's about everybody coming together that believe in a project, that want to deliver and create this new type of environment. And it's not just blockchain, right? This is about people. It's about what we want to do in our lives. So join the project. I mean, I believe in Elastos. I believe that this is a point in time where something like this will actually change the world.
Awesome. Thank you. So I just wanted to add a little bit to this question, actually. So Elastos community outside of China started from last December, when we had a meetup with Neil and the Stellar and actually Ontology. So Elastos community is really the most amazing community, as Roy mentioned. So every day people ask me, hey, I know you guys wanted developers, but how can I be involved if I'm not a developer? So actually, this is a project that we need basically people from different backgrounds to help with. We need to create marketing content for people to understand what we're doing. If you have, if you can shoot videos, and if you're a PR, from a PR, background, or if you know any way that you think of that can help with Elastos or any other communities, definitely feel free to reach out. So we got help from the community a lot, actually. So the community definitely did a lot of work for the community and also for the project. So you guys are definitely welcome to reach out and see, I can do this if it's something that you guys needed. So my last question actually is I wanted to ask the panelists, what is the biggest challenge that you're facing when you're building a completely new project?
I think the biggest challenge for us is truly to, very straight up, it's truly to have a voice in the room before they judge you who you are and how old you are. Because that's most of the cases I have been faced. I'll be very honest with you guys. Even when you talk with the artist community or go to call with a gallery, when they say first, okay, you're a Chinese, you don't speak good English. And then they say, okay, you're a Chinese, you're just rich, and they don't know nothing about technology or business. It's a lot of stereotype going on. And then I think what I've been facing the most challenge is that once you let me to talk and say, let's see what happens next. Because truly, I think my education, my family support, letting me come here at 10 years old, and then keeping both side culture, and truly teaching me one thing, that you need to shatter the stereotype. And best way to do that is improve yourself. I think that's one of the biggest challenge. And then tomorrow I'm flying to Switzerland, because the largest art fair and the most exclusive one called Art Basel Switzerland gonna happen, where I'm speaking at the Forbes conference. So I guess I think it's a very different community there, as you can imagine. People who go to Basel, a small town in Switzerland, and to go there to buy $2 million, $3 million paintings, gonna listen to me talk. So those are like, very traditional, very kind of like, the kind of like community. So I think, but we'll see how it goes. I think if we speak from bottom of our heart, we explain that we're truly helping the artists, just like the View Change founders, like the founders that Dr. He said, it's about truly to give the content creators, to give them the access to shatter the status quo. We're not here to just simply destroy the gatekeepers, as you say. We're here to letting more raw talent globally to have the chance to be presented to the gatekeeper, and even to just achieve stardom. So I think that's my biggest challenge I face.
Well, to us, through my experience, actually, I left home. I left Seattle year 2000. When I left home, I told my wife this project would take about 3, at most 5 years. But now it's been on the 18th, right? And really, because as I mentioned, I believe the last internet was the internet of information. The next internet would be the next internet of code. So it's too huge a project for any individual to control or to steer, for that matter. What I would say the challenge before us is leap of faith. And really, I'll leave it to you guys, right?
Our biggest challenge probably is the following. So I do not know what I don't know. So we are greatly humbled by the last 6 years of battle in the internet space in China, which has fierce competition, probably one of the fiercest battlefield. And we made a couple of mistakes, and we saw competitors make bigger mistakes and died. We saw our next door neighbor just came out of nowhere and become a huge success, much larger than us. So we were greatly humbled by these failures and successes. So in this fast-changing blockchain world, I saw smart people doing stupid things. I saw big money doing a lot of damages to people in multiple ways, and ruin projects with good potential. So we are humbled by all this, and we know that we know very little. And we have blind sides, so that keep us awake at night. And we try to do our best, and we surround us with good and honest people like Rong Chen, and like Fan, and like Roy and Fei. These people are brutal, brutally honest. So I think we need help. We also need help from the community. If you feel that we're not doing the right thing, can you let us know?
So my answer is also along those same lines, but it's more about misinformation. There's a lot of misinformation about blockchain. And as you talk to various folks, you know, they just come up with all this weird stuff that is somewhat implausible because they don't know the details of the information or the complexity of the technology in itself. Building trust is not just about blockchain. Blockchain has been around forever. A lot of this technology has been around forever. It's just implementation of consensus models with the blockchain, with digital acrylic graphs, with various other types of proofing, right? But what's exciting about that is that there's potential. There's opportunity. As we clear and clarify a lot of these things up with folks, then they'll be able to build solutions in the future that I think that we can't even imagine at this point in time. So for me, yeah, I think the biggest challenge is all this, you know, BS that's around out in the industry right now.
Awesome. Thank you. So do you guys have, if you guys have any questions, you can let the panelists know. So, okay.
I just had a quick question. I know you guys have been establishing partnerships. You've been establishing partnerships in the recent weeks with BitGame and then the Meta Alliance. Can you talk a little bit more about how you're partnering together and what do you think is going to come out of it, the partnership?
You mean BitGame?
BitGame and then the Meta Alliance with A-Chain.
And which one?
The Meta Alliance that you had with A-Chain.
A-Chain. Oh, okay.
A-Chain and Matrix AI.
Matrix AI. That was last time in Beijing. Recently, we have an announcement. BitGame actually is doing in-app exchanges because when you do mobile apps and they got the game tokens, and because when they do some chores during the games, and then they drop different kinds of coins like ELA coins and Bitcoins, Ethereum coins, basically as a reward along the way. So they're building the exchanges because we just announced actually yesterday we have the small lightweight wallet built into mobile apps. So then they can eventually they're going to do decentralized exchanges, right, through wallets. So that's a crypto exchange, but then since there are too many of them on the market, so they want to focus to be Elastos primarily focused on the Elastos community, right? They're going to build in-apps exchanges. So I want to warn people who is not really into the crypto world yet, because there are so many exchanges, yet almost none of them being regulated by governments, Okay, not regulated has two sides of a coin. One is, of course, people are emphasizing on decentralization, on individuals, but on the other hand, it's easily being manipulated, right? And I don't want to scare too many, but then since we want to have a built-in partnership, and we want to make sure it's decentralized and open source, there's no middleman to manipulate the market, right? We want to do some experiment. So that's why we find out Big Game want to align with us and work with us as the first built-in exchanges. That's one. And also like A-Chain and 6 other public chains, smaller ones, we want to form a kind of alliance. That's a very loosely coupled alliance. The reason being, because after all, we are building a new internet. We call it smart web. First thing, we want to have this web has decentralized IDs. Decentralized IDs for users, for websites, for digital assets, right? And that said, we also want to have friendly chains, like a wallet to have different tokens from different public chains. So we can work together to build sub-ecosystems. For example, like Fresco, right? They're artwork-based community. Can you think of that artwork community is, of course, we want to build a side chain out of Elastos and build a sub-community out of for artworks. That said, we don't really insist on everyone has to use our side chain. They could be using their own public chains, but all of the public chains are emphasizing building their own communities. But community, we don't want the communities to be silos of separated communities. We want the communities somehow can talk to one another. Kind of like, as I mentioned, internet is an internet of different parties, right? Different public chains, they do need a internetworking. They do want to have a unified, decentralized IDs, not controlling them, yet they can collaborate between the public chains. So we want to work with the local public chains, for that matter, just to demonstrate it's possible. That's why we have this announcement.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you doing, Mr. Chen? So I had a question. I looked at the roadmap, and I know you're working on the Elastos ID service and mining. I'm trying to mine in December. So what, in terms of mining Bitcoin and the merge mining with Elastos, I noticed you also have delegated proof of stake. Also, will the rewards be the same, or that's something you haven't dealt with yet?
Well, if you look at our logo there, basically there are 2 tiers.
Yeah.
The public chain tier of Elastos, for those who don't know, actually one of our angel investors is Bitmain. Bitmain is the largest Bitcoin mining machine manufacturer. They also make the mining CPU chips. And that said, we are collaborating with Bitmain, developing the merge mining algorithms. So then by the end of this year, people who buy Bitcoin mining machines could mine Bitcoin and Elastos coin at the same time without consuming extra computation power. And basically one mining machine to maintain 2 ledgers. One is Bitcoin and the other one is Elastos. So we gain trust, right? Make sure the Elastos ledgers are not easily manipulated by hackers. That said, on top of this decentralized ELA public chain, we also build another tier, which is so-called a decentralized carrier. As I mentioned, the mobile carrier or internet carriers like IoT carriers could do some evil, like broadcasting home videos to the public. And that said, can we make the home IoT peer-to-peer network, self-driven, autonomous running. So that decentralized carrier, decentralized peer-to-peer network currently is open source already on GitHub, and we're going to assign individual decentralized IDs to this peer-to-peer network by this end of this year, this month. So we're going to have the IDs by June 30th. And on top of this, we're going to build, in July, we're going to build the first SDK, targeting release in early August. That said, because of course, from your phone to your home, you need a peer-to-peer network. Only there are 80% of the chance we can do something called direct access. So from your phone to your home, actually using ADP protocol, there's an 80% chance we can set up a virtual circuit from your phone to your home. And the other 15 to 20% of the cases, you have to through a big relays to do the video relaying, right? The video bandwidth is very expensive in China. It's less expensive in the United States, but still it's expensive, right? So we need the super nodes to like FaceTime of Apple. They have huge central video nodes to do the relaying, right? To guarantee the quality of video. So then we definitely rely on some big middleman in a way, but we want to make sure the middleman is autonomous running. It's just a pipe. They cannot intercept the video because the video is encrypted end to end. But then somehow they need to be rewarded. So we're thinking to have DPoS, to have like 21 super nodes doing the relaying in each continent of the world. But we're not sure whether it's 21, 31, but currently we're planning on 21 of them, just being a lucky number from EOS, right? And I don't know, because we have to do deploy 21 first, and then see how it performs, right? If it's too many or too less, and then we'll add a few more and subtract a few more. But we'll start with, more likely by the end of the year, will be 21 to start with. But then that said, we are putting the DPoS tier. But our solution is somewhat different from EOS because all the 21 nodes actually, the trust, as I said, is based out of our public chain, right? Because the 21 nodes, who has the right to be the 21 nodes? Because we don't have the EOS have EOS coins to vote themselves. We have the 21 nodes voted by ELA coins, right? So ELA has more trust through merge mining with Bitmain. And then we voted on the 21 nodes of a second tier. So that's the model. I don't know the specific, has to come out with engineers. And we do have the side chain working yet. The DPoS is still under development as we speak. The side chain, the first application of the side chain would be the DID, decentralized ID, by the end of this month. And then we'll build digital asset side chains for like a Fresco kind of applications. And then that's expected in late July or early August. And after that, we'll try out this decentralized carrier and to see what's the best parameters for the relay servers, or what's the reward for those.
Thank you.
I think I can add some to that as well. I'm very intimate with the EOS DPoS, especially the DPoS 3 and BFT that's currently going on. So you asked about merge mining and would your rig work with DPoS? And the answer,
GPUs.
Yeah,
Regular GPU rigs.
yeah, it won't. That's the short answer. It won't, because it's super nodes that will be selected and voted by for block production because of proof of stake, how much stake they have within the sidechain. Now, that being said, doesn't mean that every sidechain that Elastos creates will be using DPoS. But it also doesn't mean that you couldn't get rewarded from a DPoS infrastructure. A DPoS type of implementation, you get incentivized through various things. types of verification processes, being a service provider, a content creator. You can upvote and get rewarded for that as well. So there's other ways of getting incentivized with depots, and it's not just mining. Okay. Now going back to the POW on the main chain, I think that makes sense because of the fact that you want to do merge mining with a Bitcoin. You probably want to do that because that'll give you the ability to potentially run for Bitcoin and ELAs at the same time. But the thing is that on that main chain, I think there needs to be something that we have to determine of value with an ELA. And that is, I think in the future, the side chains themselves doing the transport back to the main chain is where those incentives will occur, because between depots to a POW, that SVP layer is going to be very difficult, right? Because you're going to do a sub-second transaction to a 2 to 3 minute transaction. So I think it's going to be a very interesting prospect, but hopefully as we look at dApps and how they build that interoperability layer, it could alleviate some of the current problems with those types of transactions. So hope that answers your question.
Yes, it did.
For WeatherBlock, can you give some examples of what real-world applications you'd be looking to integrate with for IoT?
Good question. I haven't thought that far. Hello? Okay. I was saying, good question. I haven't actually thought that far because we still have to build that base layer, right? We have to build various things within the subsystem, like bootstrapping. I mean, bootstrapping you think would be very simple. You just bootstrap to a domain. But in the future, you might not want to bootstrap into a domain to understand your peers. You want to make sure that you have more security and control over your privacy. So those are the types of things I'm thinking about. But once that is implemented, I think everything that needs sensor data in the future will be able to attach to a node, and from there, we'll be able to capture that information. Now, it's not about the blockchain at that point. At that point, it is about sharing of information, sharing of data. And that's my ultimate goal, is to be able to share information across organizations. Right? Organizations being, for example, drone driving right now, right? Autonomous driving. Needs a lot of deep learning, machine learning, and these organizations don't share information between themselves. Well, those vehicles in that aspect are IoT devices. They're out there, they're gathering data on a continuous basis. So they're crashing. They're like killing people right now, right? But if these organizations were able to share their information, then their body of data for their training data is going to be that much larger, right? So the result will be that much better. And, you know, the prospect of all of this is that it will allow for not only that, but for these organizations to trust each other by not trusting each other. They retain their privacy because the personal information of those individual drivers that they're gaining this knowledge from is not being put at risk, right? So I think this is where all these things come together. IoT, blockchain, AI, I mean, that is the ultimate. So.